he don't have a clocking.
No students tonight. End of the year. They got all their stuff in already.
They're done.
How you been, David?
Okay, Mayor, how are you?
Good.
What?
No, just checking my microphone.
They should all be, and you need it up?
They're up. It didn't sound it because I didn't have it close to me, I guess. Intensely, yeah. So.
Okay.
I don't want Frank getting mad at me.
Are the other two coming in?
Well, we got 5 minutes yet. Well, 4 minutes.
Can he come?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Maybe he's trying to come. No, he takes the stairs.
Jim was down in Lewis's office. Yeah. Working on my patio today.
Starting to see.
I'm telling.
Let me send you pictures.
Oh dear.
No.
How much is it worth to you not to say anything? Just asking.
I got about.
Time to do anything last year or this year? I mean, the mulch. There's no mulch left. I need 15 yards of mulch.
I put in about
Frank.
40 feet of retaining wall.
Hey, hey.
Hey, Ray.
Hey, Ken.
Thanks for supper, Sandra.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Anytime.
Yeah, I have that one police officer wife that vending machines out of the vending machine down on the second floor, and it's supposed to be all healthy stuff. No, I need a Snickers.
Oh, you can go to mine. I usually have Snickers in mine.
Oh yeah, you're the little one, so I need a big one.
Oh, all right. Well, you can go through the whole thing and.
I need full size. Double bars are even better.
Want to get that jolt?
Yeah.
How are you?
Hello, everybody.
And everybody
Hello, everybody.
coming in at the same time.
Gang's on here. Where's Mr. Malone?
David?
Hello there, Mr. Edgar.
Yeah, I think I did get that, yeah.
Huh?
I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to review it yet, but I did get it.
Gotta order a new phone. This battery. You know what? They force you to get a new battery, and a new battery's as much as a new phone.
You want to buy a phone? Yeah.
Yeah, we got to
I'll definitely get back to you on it, though.
on the
Okay.
phone. So
It's ridiculous, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Gang's on
all
here.
right.
How are you?
I got more color yesterday than when I was in Florida
That sounds.
for a week, 10 days.
It was hot, man. It was.
We're going to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the invocation, followed by the pledge of the flag. Heavenly Father, as we gather here to make decisions for our city and our residents, may we use only our best skills and judgment
keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us. And always may we act in accordance with what is best for our community and our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Ettinger?
Here.
Mr. Milan?
Here.
Mr. O'Connell?
Here.
Dr. Ruggles?
Here.
Mrs. Volcano?
Here.
Mayor Panto?
Here. I'd like to have approval of the agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Moved in second. I'd like to offer a couple amendments. One, I'd like to add Bill number 13, which is a $50,000 grant to the Boys and Girls Club Playground being sponsored by the Kiwanis Club. That, as you know, we were talking about proceeds from the Lafayette College Parks and Recreation Program for the public. Every developer who develops a project in the city of Easton has to pay into a Parks and Recreation Fund. We started that in 2008. And the money can only be used to upgrade green space, parks, trails, hiking facilities, and baseball fields and things like that. So $50,000 of that money has been pledged to the Kiwanis Club for the Boys and Girls Playground, which is a $200 and some thousand project to include not only playground but also community gardens in my old neighborhood. Also, I'd like to add a resolution to bring back the civil service rules off the table because they were on the table for tonight's meeting. And I'd like to add, after the resolution on our police officer of the year, to give a Da Vinci update. I move those for inclusion.
Second.
Moved in second, discussion.
Is that under new business?
We're reading the agenda right now.
We're going to do Da Vinci after number 7, mark that 7A. The Bill 13 is new business, yes, because it's only getting introduced, it's not getting voted on. And then the resolution to bring the services off the table, I don't know, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Murphy, will we have to do that under old business?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do that under old business.
Need a vote.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Action on our minutes of our May 8th meeting.
Move. Second.
I'm sorry, who moved?
I did.
And who seconded?
I did.
Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Roll call.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Okay, me, aye. Okay.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Answering my text. Okay, at this point, I'll turn it over to Councilmember Milan for a really interesting and really great guy who's a member of our police department and for our police officer of the year.
Madam Clerk, do you want to read the resolution, please?
Yep. Do you want me to read the whole thing?
Please.
Okay. Introduced by Peter Milan, co-sponsored by Ken Brown, James Ettinger, Dave O'Connell, Roger Ruggles, Sandra Volcano, and Salvatore Panto Jr. Whereas Detective Jamie Louisi has been a member of the Easton Police Department since 2010, and whereas during his career, Detective Louisi has served in the Patrol Division, the Defensive Tactics Unit, the Special Response Team, and the Criminal Investigation, Vice Division, etc. Whereas throughout his career, Detective Louisi is dedicated to the mission of the Easton Police Department and its goal to make our community safe, as evident with the receiving of numerous decorations, commendations, and citations. And whereas due to his dedication, Detective Louisi has sacrificed many hours away from his family and home. And whereas Detective Louisi is a valued and dedicated member of the Easton Police Department. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the City of Easton congratulates Detective Louisi for being honored as Easton Police Officers of the Year by the Kiwanis Club of Easton, and City Council commends him for his outstanding service and achievements and wishes him much success in the future.
So moved.
Second.
I would ask if the television cameras would not film Mr. Officer Luisi, only because of the work that he does with our department. Thank you so much.
Is Frank gonna show up?
We've taken care of the streaming. He's not going to be on streaming.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Do you want to come up? Detective Louisi, you want to come up for your award?
Oh, just
Oh, my apologies.
and we pull it to the side. Middle one.
Before we have Jamie come up, I'd just like to say a few words here, if I could, in reference to the Officer of the Year. We have this event every year. On May 15th, the Kiwanis Club of Easton, as well as our department, we take a moment to honor one of our officers, like I said, every year. And this year, obviously, the selection was for Officer Jamie Luisi. Just a little bit about the award. The award was created basically back in 1961 when President Kennedy created Memorial Day, which is May 15th, and the week that surrounds it as Police Week. Basically, we took a moment then to make sure that we never forgot those officers who basically gave that ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty. And basically, what we try to do is we try to also then honor one of our officers every year to make sure that we are taking that time to represent or to thank those officers who do such a great job for us. This year, Jamie Luis, just to say a few things about him, just an absolute great guy, an actual hardworking officer and an individual who comes to work every day with a smile on his face. And he works extremely hard in all of the endeavors that he does because he loves the city, he loves the department, and basically loves the job that he does. I would ask that he would come forward here for a moment, and then we can present him with the award. The way this award is basically selected is any officer within our department can actually submit an officer for Officer of the Year. Once that submission comes to the department, it goes in front of every single one of our supervisors, where they would basically vote. It's like a ballot vote to basically decide if that officer, in their opinion, is worthy of such an honor. And in this instance, it was unanimously voted on that Jamie Luisi did deserve and should receive this award. So it's really a big deal to us. It's a big deal to all the officers, and we're extremely proud of him. It was my honor and my privilege to basically say congratulations.
We'll go down. We'll go to him so he doesn't get on the camera.
I was going down to him. Oh, well,
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I know. Dave, how are you? Thank you.
One of Officer Luisi's 4 children is here tonight. Why don't you stand up and be recognized? Good job. We always make it a point to thank the family, because the family also gives themselves and their sacrifice for their father or husband to be away from home, so to keep us all safe. And I can't be more proud of a police department that is just doing a fabulous job in every one of them. And as I look at our fire chiefs that are here tonight, I can feel comfortable going to bed at night and falling asleep because I know they're on their duty too. So I really appreciate all of our public services. As a matter of fact, I will mention under my report about what was just done at the railroad station. I will do that under our report.
oh, I didn't take a look. Did they?
Oh, yeah.
I just noticed that. All the
So at this time, I'm going to give an update on something that we were preempted by earlier today. I'm going to go to the podium only because this has been such a major project for the last 3 years, and a lot of thousands of hours have been spent on it. So I'd like to read this into the record. It's important that I report to City Council this evening on the status of the proposed Vinci Science City project in our city. I'd like it to be known from the start that these comments that I still support the idea of having a science center in our city that would help to motivate and engage young people in the areas of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. But the project has changed so many times over the last few years, and we couldn't say much because we were in negotiations. The project started initially as an aquarium and a science center, but because of potential of another aquarium in the Poconos, the aquarium was changed to a biodome almost overnight, featuring the Delaware Lehigh watershed and a science center. But I think the administration and the city was still committed to having a science center in our city, regardless of what the attraction would be, as far as whether it's an aquarium or a watershed. The facility would have a manufacturing floor, technology area, a science area, a Science and Me health area, and a traveling exhibit hall, a Da Vinci showcase area, and much more. From the beginning of these negotiations, I have stated and assured City Council that Da Vinci could not be supported financially by the city's general fund, and that it would have to generate enough revenues to the city to support the debt that would be incurred. In other words, the Science Center could not negatively impact the city's financial position. We received great support from the council members. We appreciate that. And I've had great support from the administration as we continue to negotiate the best deal we could for the city. Da Vinci's fundraising efforts to date included a $20 million commitment from the Commonwealth, which was originally slated to be $50 million when we entered into our contract negotiations. Or not contract, but negotiations. It was based on our discussions initially with Da Vinci. A $10 million investment by Northampton County was originally discussed at $15 million that we were told, and publicly revoked with the majority of the new county council overturned a contribution made by the previous county council. The new county executive and the new county council have been very supportive of the project, as this past year they gave them $250,000, and a multi-million-dollar commitment to the project could be imminent if this project goes forward. The city administration continued our $30 million self-liquidating model in spite of the reductions by the state and the county, with new ideas of how to finance it. There have been numerous changes and revisions to the project itself. The extension of the Da Vinci Science Center letter of intent non-binding contract was granted by City Council, extending to the end of next month. We appreciated that as we continue to try to make this project happen. This would allow the Da Vinci organization to add a third-party private developer to the project. What had happened was, over the course of negotiations with the team of Mr. Hopkins, Mr. Lisinecki, and Mr. Campos and myself, and a couple other members, Mr. Kingsley, is he here? John? Yeah, John's here. We looked at this project and we continued to negotiate. What we felt the project needed was a private portion, a private development portion. We couldn't say that publicly, but many of the city council members know who came and asked about the project. That private development, which Da Vinci wanted a hotel, that would then pay taxes to what we're going to create was a tax incremental financing package, a TIF. TIFs are very things so that the taxes that the hotel or the private development would pay would help pay down our debt. So our $30 million really looked more like $12 million. The $12 million would not be supported completely by amusement tax, so we negotiated a $1.50 extra at what we were calling an infrastructure fee. So every person who was going to that facility would be paying $4.50 to the city rather than $3. That paid our debt, and we based it not on the 400,000 or 600,000 people that Da Vinci was giving us, because what our read of their marketing studies showed that there would be about 400,000 people. So we based our financing model on 325,000 people. In our negotiations, we also agreed, a give back to them, that if they had over 325,000 people a year, which the first 5 years they would definitely do that, we would actually put that extra money into a surplus reserve fund that could be drawn down on in lower than 325,000 person year. So we did think through a lot of when we had those public meetings, the public may have thought we weren't listening, but we certainly were. The same concerns that they had, we had. The same concerns that they had about, going out of business in 10 years, the city stuck with a building. We had those same concerns. We tried to come up with models that allowed us to gain access. We used the Crayola Experience model every time we could. Just so you know, in case you don't know, the City of Easton and the Redevelopment Authority own those properties. We bought the properties, and Crayola turned it into, at that time, the Crayola factory. If Crayola goes and leaves the city, as they tried to do, they were going to do about 8 years ago when we negotiated their deal, we own those buildings. There's about 5 of them. They were, the original Orr's department store, Forrest shoe store, and a couple others in the back. So we try to use the model and learn from that model. That's been a very big success for the city. How can we make this a success? So we incorporated a lot of the same things. Unfortunately, the amusement tax had to be added because it wasn't enough to cover the debt. To pay the city's portion of the debt, we had the additional, in addition to the TIF and the $1.50, we also said to them that we would dedicate most of their building permit fee to them over the next 3 years so that they would have that kind of money. working capital. It became very evident that they kept waiting, and first it was county council, then it was the city, to get their deal before they were going to the private sector. We expressed to them serious concern about their inability to raise private dollars and that they should be working on that first. And that sort of fell on deaf ears. About 8 months ago, we met with their leadership to express that to them. And again, we didn't feel very comfortable about it. And then on May 7th, as things started to deteriorate with the negotiations, we had a meeting, Mr. Campos and I, with their CEO, and basically expressed to them that the city's full faith and credit would no longer be viable, and that because they reduced the project from $150 million to $120 million to $80 million, and because they reduced the size of the structure from 150,000 to 70,000 square feet, we couldn't, in all righteous minds financially, give up a beautiful, valuable 3-acre site for a 70,000 square foot science center because they had told us the week before that they didn't receive any proposals for a hotel. Our suggestion to them 6 months ago was to put out an RFP. Maybe it's not a hotel, maybe it's an office building. And if it's a hotel, you got to put them in the front. You can't put them in the back of this big 110-foot science center. So things started to deteriorate, and on May 7th, we made a decision, basically the administrative team, to have a meeting with their CEO and basically express to her that we could not move forward on the initial site due to their decision to downsize the project, but offered an alternative site that would actually have been not only a better site, but with some serious cost savings, especially since it's out of the floodplain. Still downtown, still easily accessible by everyone else, by the public, but we offered that. And it was agreed that we would come to City Council on May 22nd, because we'd already missed the May 8th meeting, because they were going to get back to us. And then, was it last Friday? Last Friday, I think they got back to us. And they said they were still looking at the other site. And we said, great. And then today, they beat us to the punch. They knew we were going to give our update today. And they knew I was going to be as honest with you as I can be about, well, not with you, but with the public, that everything we were going to discuss in negotiation was going to come out. Because we feel we've done everything that we needed to do to keep them in Easton, including finding them an alternative site. They called this afternoon. We had a conference call at 1 o'clock, and by 1:15 they put out their press release because they knew we were meeting tonight. I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me whether they got the first punch or we got the second punch and we counterpunch. The fact is, I'm trying to tell City Council is, number one, we were coming here as of May 7th. We were coming here to tell you exactly what I just read to you. And we were coming here, and in the interim, I did call Senator Brown's office. I did call Senator Boscolo's office. I did talk twice to Bob Freeman to update them, and I talked to Lamont McClure. I talked to those four people because they've been great partners for us. What I also told them was that we had a good location, an alternative location that we thought, plan B, to reset the project, start over with a good business plan, a good financial model, and some private sector funding on a new site, but the city would not be there with our full faith and credit. And we're not going to give our full faith and credit to a project that we just can't, we don't know what the 20-year lifespan is going to be. So we did change, they'll say that we changed our position, and that's what was said in there. We rescinded our position. Yeah, we did. But I don't know that they're going to find another municipality that's going to give them the commitment and the time, hundreds of thousands of hours that we gave them, with great ideas. And I don't know what's going to happen to the project, but if they want it in Easton, we'll still be glad to work with them. But it will not be on, what we had, if you recall, was the self-liquidating model of financing it. And what that means is that the city would take out the bond issue. At this point, it was down to $12 million. And then repay it back with the money that they generated. The risk there is that they may have a bad year, or the economy may go sour. We heard everything that the public said. Okay, we were shaking our head, and we would meet average and say, boy, we're either as smart as them or they're as smart as us. And we really felt that the pay-as-you-go model was what we needed them to do. And we will, if we do work with Da Vinci, and this is up to you. This isn't up to the administration. Tonight, we were going to make a recommendation to you to cease and desist on that site. That was going to be our recommendation to you. Apparently, again, it's a counterpunch because they beat us to the punch. However, we would not give them our full faith and credit. If they want to move forward, we told the Da Vinci personnel and people that they would have to go on not a self-liquidating model, but a pay-as-you-go model. They want to borrow the money, and they want to put up a science center. Anything they generate from that building, we will give back to them in the form of a grant every year to entice them to be here. But we are not going to take out the debt on ours because we've already had conversations with our financing agency, our financial advisors, and John King has been very involved in that. And he was hired for his financial expertise. And the more we looked at this project over the last 2 years, the more we just got very uncomfortable with it, with the self-liquidating model. The pay-as-you-go model is not a problem. There's no risk to the city. The risk is on Da Vinci. So, given the unexpected announcement today by Da Vinci, we're not making a recommendation to you. I don't think we have to do anything. If they should come back to us and say, you know what, we really do like the second location, we'll talk to them, and then we'll update you. But at this point, I feel bad that I feel good. I know that's an oxymoron, but that's the way it is. We've been dealing with this for the last 2 years, and when the public says we don't listen to them, yeah, we do. We didn't listen to them too much about the floodplain. As a matter of fact, we gave a location that's not in the floodplain because we did look at that. We didn't listen to them too much about traffic because really the 400 people, 1,000 people that come to Crayola really don't create a lot of traffic, create a lot of parking. Don't want to get on the P word, but the parking, but they don't create a lot of traffic. But the traffic study would have to be done. So we believe very strongly that the Da Vinci Science Center is dead. They're released today, and our conversation with them today was very abrupt and curt. But we don't think it's a bad decision for the city. I will tell you that on May 7th, Mr. Campos and I charged Mr. Kingsley and Mr. Hopkins to start the RFP process for the new, for the existing Days in Sight. And I just want to read what I wrote so I read it correctly. The RFP for this parcel will go out within the next few weeks, and we're looking to you on City Council to create what we are calling an expanded committee. We can't open up the whole process to the public. We understand, and I think everyone understands that. But we've already come up with some names of some additional people to put on the committee to have them review it and have the city administration as an ex officio member, not a voting member. City council member would be a voting member, but the staff, we wouldn't be a voting member. And we've come up with some really good names of people who want to be involved in directing that. A really good realtor who's recognized as a professional, an additional finance person, in addition to Mr. Patterson. So we're looking for that. We're asking you if you have recommendations, I'll gladly accept your recommendation and try to make them part of a team. But we believe that we're going to put together an expanded team. Probably it might be as many as 12 or 15 people. But we're going to put that together and put the RFP out. We know what our zoning code is for that site. We will also look at the possibility of subdividing it into smaller tracts. We've talked about that even with Da Vinci, but the private sector and the and the Da Vinci section, but they didn't go for that. So we're looking at it, and I can tell you that 3 years ago, this city was anxious for something. Today, we're not as anxious. We can be a little bit stingy about who we let in and who we don't. That site, we've gotten, I mean, some people spend thousands of dollars on proposals to already show us. And we said, can't see anything, we don't want to know anything. When the RFP goes out, we'll put your name on the list. But we've had people who've inquired about that site already. We will contact, Mr. Kingsley will contact the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation. There are people looking for corporate office and things. We think the Hearst project, which wasn't here 3 years ago, we think that is going to add credibility to maybe a corporate office across the street with some mixed-use stores and maybe some housing, maybe even some single-family homes, owner-occupied along 4th Street. I don't know what people are going to propose, but I do know that we want to move forward on that. We've always moved forward, and I'll let Mr. Lisinecki talk under the financial report about the financing, how that was. Remember, I believe I said it today, and I tried not to say anything before city council found out, and that's why I told you I'd give you the update tonight, because I didn't want you to read about it in the paper tomorrow morning. You can't keep moving the goalpost on us. The goalpost kept being moved. And, the changes in the size, the changes in the scope, the aquarium, everybody knows what aquarium, no one knows what a biodome is. But those things, we worked with them and we got through it. And Lewis knows, I said, I don't really care about what you put as an attraction. I care about, let's take the iFly, for example. From day one, I had a problem with the iFly. You know what the problem was? The cost. They couldn't tell me how much it would cost to put in and how much it was going to cost to operate versus how much revenue it was going to bring in. I can't see families bringing kids to a science center and then spending an additional upcharge of as much as $60 to $65 per person on iFly. Every little kid's going to want it, and you're going to hear kids crying because they want an iFly. I needed better data, financial data. I don't think we were getting, and that was really important to us. The important thing to us was the science center and the exhibit hall. The traveling exhibit where you can bring King Tutankhamun in, dinosaurs, Pixar, and all the big shows that even our own little survey showed that even people in the outskirts of Philadelphia would rather come here than deal with the center city traffic in Philadelphia. So I'm looking to city council. We'd like to have the committee's recommendation to council by the early fall. We'd still like to have the property settled by the end of this year, but we're already working, as Mr. Lisinecki will tell you, on the financing of that project. We've looked at a lot of things over the last 6 or 7 months about the finances in the city, and we're going to be bringing some of that to you for your approval at a later date. But one of the things that one person was recommending that we just take our debt and we put it out over 20 years, would lower our payments by as much as $2 million a year. And I basically, and Lewis and I both agreed, we're not doing that. What we really like is we're paying down our debt about $3 million a year, 3.3 to be exact. Our debt is less than it was when we took office in comparison to how much our general fund is. And we'd like to make sure that, for example, in this whole building, it's a 15-year note. We've already been here 3 years. Why would you want to put it out 20 years? It doesn't make sense. You're paying all that extra interest. So there are some things that Mr. Lisinecki will talk to you about financially that are going to change in the city, and I'll make the announcement so you don't have to, but the A+ rating is not going to be there anymore for a lot of reasons. Some have to do with the sewer authorities and the way we finance that. Some has to do with what they read in the paper that they thought we were doing with Vinci. They found out we're not, but that we have to prove to them that we can continue to get back up to an A+. But the good news is that we have interest in that 3 acres. And for those people that don't think it's worth $6 million, we just sold less than an acre for 1.1. That's not in as good a location as that one. We believe that we can get our $6 million. The second thing that the public doesn't understand, it's an opportunity zone. And that gives us a whole lot of leverage of what we can do and what developers can do on that site. We got the entire West Ward and the entire downtown are in opportunity zones. And those opportunity zones are very lucrative for developers to put in not just high-end stuff, but affordable housing as well. So maybe there's an opportunity to do something. What we thought we were going to do is reset the entire Da Vinci and start over, and they decided not to be in Easton. So I'll gladly answer any questions you may have. And I apologize, Mr. Milan, I know you didn't know about it, because we didn't know about it until today either. We just didn't know. But I can assure you that we were coming here tonight to give this update, because last Friday things started to really crumble, and we wanted to put it out on the and unfortunately couldn't go on the agenda. The agendas were already printed. Any other comment or questions at all? Okay, thank you so much. If the press wants anything, they're here.
Mayor, can I get a copy of that, please?
Sure. You didn't get it all down?
Short hand.
Sure I did.
Short hand.
No, he'll be done.
Okay.
Pass that down, please. Sure. Okay, public comment on agenda items only. At the end of the meeting, there'll be time for public comment, but Mr. Volker.
Yeah, come on up. So we're,
Please state your name and address.
I am Scott Volker, 128 South Rosewood Street, and this is Delroy Jones.
513 First Street.
Mr. Jones went before the Historic District Commission at our last meeting, and sure. Before I start, I'd like to pass out this so you would be up to speed.
Thank you.
Sir, what was your name?
Delroy Jones.
Thank you.
And your address?
513 Ferry Street.
Thank you. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we only have 4 photographs of the door in question, so you guys have to share.
Oh, we'll share.
What door?
That way or this way.
So basically on the drawings, the first drawing on the left is what is existing now, as you can see by the photograph. The drawing in the middle is what Mr. Jones proposed to do, and the drawing on the right is what some of the suggestions from the Historic District Commission. In the end, they voted not to approve the certificate of appropriateness because they thought it was a little bit too different. Mr. Jones would like to ask that it be reconsidered what the HDC goes by as the Secretary of Interior standard, and mainly in this case, number 9, which says new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to the project to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environments. I'm trying to help Mr. Jones here, but I don't feel this is too out of character for the neighborhood. The door in the photograph is something that he's had made already. You can talk about the door.
Yes, they said they don't want a side panel. There's no side panel door in the neighborhood. I walk around the neighborhood and I take pictures of the neighborhood, and I see right beside 513 Ferry Street there is side panel door. So I don't understand why it's a big problem about that.
So Scott, Mr. Volker, I'm sorry. You're the number 3 and number 4 on the right. There, the door would. Is it the side panel they're having a problem with, or is it the door itself?
So this is already made. He has this giant oak frame, and then that's the door that would go in, and then there's 2 side lights that are carved like that with windows on the top. That's what he would like to do. Their suggestion was add a dummy door.
Make no sense.
Just for looks, and then he could do a door and a side light. I personally don't think walking up and down the neighborhood this would stand out as, it's not like he's asking to put a garage door on the front of his house. It's, I think artistic.
Please speak into the microphone.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
And he's, there's a lot of craftsmanship in the door. I don't think it would negatively affect the neighborhood, allowing this door. And so I'm just here to help explain all this for Mr. Jones here.
Doors already right. This is a new one.
They would need to do this.
Mr. Jones, are there side panels as wide as these?
No, you're gonna be 8. It would be like 18 inches.
These are 18-inch?
Correct.
What are the ones in the neighborhood? Probably more like 8?
He's got some photos.
I got some pictures and I checked.
Yeah, see, this is much narrower. Do you think it was when they denied the door? Was it because of the width of the side panels, the side lights? They look very large, very wide. These are very narrow.
True.
Again, please
The
speak
mic.
into the microphone.
Would you be recorded?
I can't really speak to exactly why. I mean, they didn't say, that specifically was it. Like I said, in their suggestion, the idea was to take one of the side panels off. I think it was basically to fit the opening. His house was a former barber shop. So it's already different than all the rest. You can see from the photo, it's got a storefront in it, and where the original door is now plywood. So his new door fits the size of what is already there now.
Mr. Jones, you plan on living there?
I live in there for 15 years and
So I'm going to stay there.
That's where I'm staying.
And for what it's worth, all the work that Mr. Jones has done on his house, he's always come before the HTC.
Yes, I know.
You can't enter from the front straight up. You have to go from the side. So it's very difficult to bring in even the furniture. The way.
It's designed, yeah.
I mean, I'll take it off the consent agenda, and we'll amend it. I'll make a motion to amend it, to accept it. I'm satisfied with your explanation. What?
So you're gonna make a motion to remove it from the consent?
Yeah. More, and I can amend it then after I remove it, correct? Right? Madam Clerk?
Yeah.
All right.
And just so I'm clear, Mr. Murphy, we do have the final say, correct?
Yes.
That's correct, Mr. Brown.
So if that's okay with you, well, I'll take it off the consent agenda, I'll amend it to accept it, and we'll vote on it then.
Okay.
So if you want to stick around, you can stick around. It's going to be after in a couple minutes, though.
Okay.
All right? Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just a matter, was this was amended at the beginning of the agenda? What
I'm
item-
taking off the consent agenda. I'll make a motion to take,
Which one?
which letter was it?
Letter E.
Okay, thank you.
is that okay?
It's just, I would just be a door.
Need a second.
I don't either.
We're not there yet, though.
We're not on the consent agenda
Madam
yet.
Clerk, we're not there yet.
Okay.
Anyone else like to address City Council on an agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda now. Mr. Clerk, Madam Clerk.
Okay, under the consent agenda, we have Bill number 12, which is opening and dedicating Highland Street and right-of-ways. We have a resolution approving a COA for 61 North 3rd Street. We have a resolution approving a COA for 75 North 4th. We have a resolution approving a COA for 30 Center Square. We have a resolution approving a COA for 513 Ferry Street. We have a resolution approving a certificate of appropriateness for One Lens Court, and a resolution approving a certificate of appropriateness for 315 and 321 Northampton Street, as well as a resolution approving a certificate of appropriateness for 418 Northampton Street. And that's under all consent.
So you're gonna
But we're removing
remove E.
513.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to remove letter E under the consent agenda and
You
place
just
it under,
request it, that's all. You don't need a motion.
I'd like to request to move
Take that off.
letter E off the consent agenda and put it under unfinished business, please.
Now we'll have a motion on the consent agenda
I move the consent agenda.
minus letter E.
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion? Roll call.
Hang on 1 second, please.
No problem.
Mr. Milan,
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano,
Aye.
Mayor Panto,
Aye.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell,
No.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Okay.
that's it.
Moving on to reports from, there's no reports received by council, so we'll move on to reports of committees. Finance Committee, Councilmember Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two things coming forward tonight. I will be introducing Bill number 13, which is a change in the recreation fund budget for this year. And also, I have coming before council this evening, I have a resolution. And that is for the lease agreement between City of Easton and Lafayette College for our fleet. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mark for some commentary. So feel free to.
Thank you, Councilman Brown, members of council. As the mayor noted, on May 13th, 2019, Standard & Poor's, or S&P Global Ratings, slightly lowered its long-term rating on Easton's general obligations, or our GO debt, from an A+ to an A. S&P's outlook for the city, however, remains stable, in large part due to the sizable economic development projects currently in progress, valued at approximately $150 million or more. The drop from A plus to A represents S&P's concerns that about the city's liquidity position, and to address this, the administration is providing the following updates and proposed actions. I believe many of you are aware of most of these, but we'd like to clear those up. First, to start, the $6.5 million note that we took out with M&T Bank for the acquisition of the Days Inn site. What we did is we worked with M&T and received a 2-year extension to the note, which was originally due at the end of this year, 2019, which then allows us or alleviates near-term liquidity concerns. In conjunction with this, City and M&T are also working on a plan to wrap the note around the city's existing debt via a bond issue, including an extraordinary call option, which will give us additional flexibility regarding the full payoff. In other words, we won't be rushed to sell that property. Regarding the $2.4 million grant anticipation note, the city continues to interact with the Commonwealth's Office of the Budget on a regular basis, and we recently confirmed that we have all the necessary documents needed to allow for the final drawdown on the Bushkill Creek Corridor RACP grant, which was the basis of our request for the grant anticipation notice. And when we receive those funds from the state, we'll then pay off that grant. Sewer Transport Fund. S&P asked for additional clarification on our transport, and we are proposing basically the creation of a new sewer transport fund in our 2020 budget process. And that'll basically carve out the operations of the sewer plant are already broken out. This will be the actual sewer within the city and the lines. As the mayor noted, the Vinci Science Project has basically come to a close. I won't rehash that. And lastly, in accordance with the standards set by the self-regulating organization Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board, which is overseen by the SEC and served via EMA, or the Electronic Municipal Market Access System, the administration wanted to make council aware of the ratings change prior to filing the required reports, which we'll be doing today. Are there any questions on the change in
Dr.
ratings?
Ruggles?
Yes, the extension for the M&T, is that just paying interest only and then over that 3-year period, or what's the agreement there?
Yes, we do have to make small principal payments, but it would be a relatively small amount. And obviously, before we sign anything, we would need to bring that to council for approval. But wanted to let you know that we have worked with the bank and have, I say, put that issue, to the side for now.
My other question is on the sewer portion that you were describing. I'm not exactly clear as to what that is and what is actually being done. When you say carved out, I don't know what that really means.
Fair point. So currently we bill residents for sewer and trash. As part of that, the services provided to maintain the sewers are basically in that the revenue and expense are currently in our general fund and have been there for as long as basically anyone can
Since
remember.
1972.
At least since 1972.
Some of us can remember.
Some of us,
Sure,
some of us
sorry,
were
it was
rather young at that point. So we are going to basically set that up as a separate fund and say, okay, the revenues that we collect for the sewer, maintenance of the sewer lines will be aligned with the expenses that go to maintain those lines. So the revenue that we charge or the revenue we receive from billing residents will be aligned with the costs of maintaining those sewer lines.
Will be put in a separate fund.
Correct.
And historically, the amount that we have expended towards those activities have been what we have received from the sewer billing?
Correct.
I think
Uh-huh.
the one caveat to setting up this separate fund is that there's going to be a required fund balance. So if you recall the exercise of putting together the MS4 fund
Right.
recently, we're showing revenue and expenses. the fund balance in that case is accumulating. There's no requirement to have a fund balance. In this new fund that we're going to create, we're going to show, again, expenses and revenue. We'll probably show potentially a contribution back to the general fund, so it could be itemized. But we're going to have a requirement to have some sort of fund balance. I'm not going to say what that number is right now. We're working with our auditors. The fund balance will be subtracted from our general fund. So that's going to be a new expense, if you will, by maintaining a fund balance in this new fund. Today that money comes directly into the general fund. So S&P would like to see more transparency on how the revenues and expenses come into the general fund.
I look forward to reviewing your proposal. So I
do we.
understand it a little bit better.
So do we.
I really don't, I mean, I don't think this is the time to go into it,
Sure.
but I mean, but I want to ensure that whatever revenue that we are getting there is not detracting from our general fund. I mean, I mean, historically, I can't say that we could say for sure that everything that we build for the sewer billing was spent on repairing sewers and just on sewers. I think
You're correct.
some of that came into the general fund, right?
We'll have a
Yeah.
Well,
for the budget
yeah,
process.
the
we'll
sewer
have a model
authority,
for you.
we do earn money from the sewer authority for being the operator of the plant. You know that.
Right. Mhm.
But we don't separate treatment from collection, and that's what they're basically asking us to do. There's a treatment cost and there's a collection cost,
This is a change in S&P's philosophy.
and
this
it's
is what
part
they
of the
wanna see
reason
from
for the
city.
tick down. And we hope when we put this back the way they want it, it's been that way since the sewer authority was formed. But I don't know, from what we're being told, the other municipalities are going to be contacted as well.
Well,
I mean,
Time will tell.
that was my question to them was, wait a minute, okay, there's Palmer Township, Wilsonboro, Forks, are they all having to do this too? Why is it just us? So, we will update the sewer authority and let them know that this may be coming down the line the next time.
I do want to say that this is, put it on the record, this is our action items that we're delivering to
Right.
S&P that we will be implementing.
Right.
Question.
Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Mark, as these bonds are coming callable for the city, how's that going to affect our S&P? That will take us back to moving towards that A+ again, correct?
Sure, the less, obviously, the less debt we have on the books, the better it is from.
And that give us more leverage going forward.
Correct.
Because now to them it looks like we're managing in a better way.
Correct.
You know, for 2 weeks from now, can you give us a breakdown of our debt? Thanks.
You're welcome.
The debt that we have includes $9 million of pension bond debts that were taken out under the Mittman administration that S&P includes in our debt line. So that'd be good to have that, and it does break it down pretty well. Any other questions for Mr. Lisinecki or Mr. Brown? All right, moving on to Economic Development, Mrs. Volcano, Councilman Volcano.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I have tonight is that I do have a letter B under new business, and it's a resolution approving a sub-recipient agreement with the Easton Redevelopment Authority to
Okay.
take over certain duties of the city.
Councilman O'Connell, Planning and Codes.
I have no report, Mayor.
Councilman Milan, Public
Mayor.
Safety.
I have nothing.
Councilman Ruggles, Public Works.
I have no report.
Councilman Eddinger, Administration.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one thing. Under Human Resources, the Fire Department, the administration is requesting that 3 additional firefighter positions be added to the current firefighter employee complement of 36, bringing it to 39. This would augment the platoon strength from 14 to 15. The 3 new positions will begin employment at the start of the next fire academy on June 28th. There are currently 3 firefighters completing the academy and 2 firefighters that are out on sick leave. There are currently 25 firefighters eligible for retirement. The administration's request for the 3 new firefighters will assist with overtime due to vacancies and as a result of eligible retirements. Once the department is stabilized, the administration will reduce the complement back to 14. And I will be moving a resolution later on to do that, just that.
Are we any further on that agreement that I had wanted for the IFF? That this is exactly what we're doing? I don't want to be told 2 years from now that, no, it's 15, past practice because it's 15. I'd like to have some type of agreement that we're doing this to help them as well as us.
Mayor, I can discuss with you afterwards.
Thank you.
The only 2 other items, if I may, Mr. Edinger, which were just footnotes here, but that were covered already, was the note regarding Da Vinci, as well as the RFP that's going to be issued for the site. Those were just in the report. And because they were given already, there's no need to elaborate on them.
Thank you, Mr. Campos. Any questions? Thank you, Mayor.
About an update, Chief, on, I see you and Stephanie and the Deputy Chief in that room. You've interviewed a lot of candidates. How is it going?
Chief Mike Krill, 11 North 6th Street, Easton, PA. Yes, we've spent a lot of time over the last several weeks preparing to post a new firefighters list because of our list being exhausted. We, as I explained a couple weeks ago at the workshop session, we're working under a compressed time frame because the Allentown Academy decided to set their date a little earlier than they would normally set it. So that put us in a position that we really had to move through the testing procedure. We've now gone through the interview portion of the testing procedure, and there will be a list released tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Great. So all the interviews are done?
All the interviews are done.
Great.
Everything's done. It will be presented before the Civil Service Board tomorrow afternoon at 3:30.
Great.
Did
Good
they
job.
did they do the agility yet?
Oh, yes, that's
okay.
been completed, yes.
You guys do everything?
And we're in the area of about 40 individuals on the list. So it'll be a list that will remain in place for 2 years.
Hard to exhaust.
Yes, much harder to exhaust than the last list. It's a difficult process. It takes a lot of man hours to get it done, and I'm glad it only happens every 2 years.
Thank you, both
Thank you.
chiefs and Ms. Weber. Great job.
Yeah, great.
Really is. I mean, I know you were on a compressed timetable, and I know to give up the amount of time, you stayed late to do your regular work, so I appreciate it.
Mayor, the police chief also had just a couple updates I think that are important
okay.
to provide.
Chief Carl Scalzo, 48 North 4th Street, Police Department. I just want to take a quick moment to just update in reference to the police department and our accreditation process. As everybody here is well aware, the Easton Police Department has been accredited since 2007. As of May 1st and 2nd, we had our reaccreditation. Again, the accreditation process is every 3 years. We have assessors come from the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police Association, the Pennsylvania Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission, and they come and do a reassessment of our department. Basically what that is they want to ensure that the policies and procedures that we have in place, that we're actually following them. So they check all of our policies, we have to basically prove every year that we're doing exactly what we say that we're doing. So this year on the 1st and the 2nd, we had our reaccreditation. Lieutenant Brian Herneken is our accreditation manager, and the accreditation went extremely well. They will be voting to reaccredit us again at the conference later in July. But some of the comments that came back in reference to the letters that we received from the assessors were that they were one of the best departments they have. The individual head assessor had actually assessed in his 13 plus years of actually doing the assessments, which is a credit to the entire department, credit to Lieutenant Herneken, who works really hard on actually putting that whole thing together. So at this moment in time, although the vote has not happened to reaccredit us, everything is pointing in that direction. So in July, I believe, the head of the accreditation process for the Pennsylvania Chiefs will be coming and presenting us with a reaccreditation. I believe that's going to be our fourth, if I'm not mistaken, reaccreditation. So the department did very well in that endeavor.
Thank you.
Oh, one other thing I guess we can update on.
Knocks
Over, yeah, over the past, probably 3 or 4 months, and I think it's even gone on longer than that. As many of you know, I was actually raised up on McCartney Street, and one of the issues that we have is speed on Knox Avenue. It's been a problem since I was a kid, and it remains a problem to this day. One of the problems with that area is it's very difficult to enforce speed just because of the nature of the way the speed signs are set up coming out of Forks Township, and the way there's a lot of points of entry into that roadway with McCartney, Knox, Cattell, and Lafayette kind of all merging there at one point. We have come up with a solution to that problem, and today we actually conducted our first a speed enforcement endeavor up there, and we're very successful in actually identifying what the speeds are that people are coming out of Forks Township, coming down into the city. We were able to basically enforce those that were violating it to an extreme amount. What we were finding is anywhere from 45 to 50 miles an hour were some of the higher speeds that we were seeing in a 25-mile-an-hour zone. So we are going to be doing that regularly over the coming, the following months and following year until we start to get the word out there that we're going to be enforcing speed in that location, and hopefully that will start to change behavior as people are driving into our city.
Dr. Ruggles?
I just want to tell you, this morning, I actually went up to Lafayette and Cattell and looked left up to Knox, right? And I looked back right, and I was about ready to go, and I looked back to the left, and 2 cars were already had already come around that corner and were right there. I mean, they had, I mean, I don't know how they took the corner as fast as they did, but I understand what you're saying.
There's been accidents there for many, many years, and,
Right.
and the speed, it comes out of Forks at 35, it drops down to 25, and we had to do some maneuvering, and it took us some time to kind of figure out exactly what we could do to be able to enforce speed up there. As you know, in Pennsylvania, local law enforcement can't use radar, so we don't have that at our disposal. But we did come up with some solutions and we put some things in place to ultimately go up there, and we now have a way that we can enforce speed, and because of that,
Is that corner off of Knox onto Cattell? That can't be 25?
It's 25 all the way coming down.
Oh, it starts there. It starts a little further
It
up.
starts up at right up prior to coming into the city.
Dave.
Mr. Hopkins?
Dave Hopkins, 123 South 3rd Street. Along with what the chief is saying, PennDOT also submitted a plan to us last week for our review. They're aware of the issue up there, so they're proposing some changes in signage, and they are considering a regulatory 15-mile-per-hour speed limit. Right now it's suggested, but the traffic engineer from PennDOT is going to put some thought into a regulatory 15. So they're recommending advanced signage before the intersection, so there'll be a turn sign 200 feet ahead. They'll have an intersection and advanced intersection sign. And they're also going to put a slow pavement marking. You may have seen those. They added them at the intersection of College Avenue and Cattell around that bend. So I think that'll be a nice visual cue for people to slow down. And then if we get the regulatory 15, I think the enforcement will be abundant.
Rita's upset about that, by the way. She's one of the offenders coming down from Forks Township.
Well, she comes down George Street. We're going to hit that one next.
She's already complained about it.
She needs a speed bump.
Used to.
See that? She's owned up to it that she speeds.
You have to reroute yourself.
This could help and will help. I know we talked about the problems at Lafayette and Cattell, and that the person that went through and severed the gas lines to the house, it could have been a real big tragedy. So if they're slowing down coming around that turn, it should reduce the number of accidents at Cattell and Lafayette as well.
And being the intersection of 2 state roads, I think, PennDOT's been a good partner. They were involved in that situation, and they understand the issues.
I remember one time where it was a school bus that was hit there.
More than once. It's been a number of
It just takes a long time for it to get across
Goes away
the
now.
street, and people come around that corner so fast, they can't stop.
Right.
So,
Mayor, what I've asked the chief, if he's going to send me a blurb, we're going to post this on social media.
Sure.
We do want the public to know that we're
Yeah,
enforcing.
we don't want to give tickets. We'd rather people just slow down and do the speed limit.
Right.
And that's the purpose of the enforcement, is hopefully to change behavior.
Can that go out on Nixle?
Um,
I
the
don't
fact
know.
that anything can go out on Nixle. I mean, the fact that we are doing enforcement up there, and
I'm not. I'm
Or
not.
just a warning,
and I mean, that's just comes down to.
beware, it's gonna change.
I'm not sure. We're using that for an alert
Okay.
for safety. But we can.
Put it out on
Let us think
Facebook.
about that, Ms.
Think about
Volcano.
it.
It's not a bad thought. So let's just think about that, and to see if there's other applications for it as well.
Okay.
While you're at the podium, I would like to thank you and your staff and the public works staff, Mr. Hopkins. Mr. Hopkins' staff was there a couple months ago cleaning out all the overgrowth and trees that are growing along the Lehigh Valley Railroad Station. And yesterday, the police chief, the captains, and some of the members of the public works actually sprayed it. It looks 100% better, 100% better, and appreciate that.
It was actually John Spadoni was there. Ron, what's Ron's last name?
Coomer.
Coomer, that's right. Ron Coomer and Bob Keegi were there from the Public Works, and those guys worked really hard. I mean, it was
Good.
They kept
I thought I was on 35th Market.
But yeah,
You're talking about the graffiti, right?
the graffiti over
Yeah,
there.
I just saw it last night, and I'm saying, I gotta call the chief about that, because he said he was gonna do it in the spring, and it's now
The spring.
getting into the summer. And it just
One
doesn't,
day
it looks like
before.
it's expanding,
Summer doesn't
But
start.
it really came out nice, and it really looks, when you're heading over to South Side, it made a big difference.
Okay,
But
so you
credit to those
did
guys
that
who went
well.
over there yesterday, and a little bit windy, but they did a heck of a job and really kind of worked hard, and they made it look, they didn't just kind of just spray it, they spray painted the brick red, the windows black, so they kind of gave it a really nice appeal.
Good.
So they did a really good
Our
job.
chief is very talented. Electrical work and now painting.
About that, man.
There's definitely a second career coming here.
Any other questions for me, or anything else you wanted me to address?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Report of the city solicitor, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mayor. Attorney Shear and I have no report. Thank you.
Report of the mayor, the only thing I will do is mention that on behalf of the city of Easton last Saturday, I was at Easton Area High School to accept the flag from the Brown and Lynch 100th anniversary. It is we are the caretaker for the flag. So, Mr. Hess, if I leave it for you, I'm sorry, Mr. Hess isn't here.
Well, you got a long
But
hair.
read it, Ms. Hess, if I leave it for you, would you put it in the cabinet? Maybe we could, for safekeeping, because if I don't produce it next year, maybe I'll go to jail or something. So, I don't know. They just said I'm the caretaker, so I don't know what that means, but it sounds like a responsible position. So we put it in the
Pass that buck.
Mayor, I would put a note that where
Brown
it
and
came
Lynch,
from, so.
I'll be speaking to them. I think their dinner's this Saturday. They have their 100th anniversary. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd put a note with it so that somebody asks and they never
Okay.
ask for it back.
Correspondence, Madam Clerk.
We have a letter from Governor Tom Wolf thanking council for supporting the Restore Pennsylvania initiative. And we also have a letter from Representative Robert Freeman also thanking us regarding the Restore Pennsylvania.
Move right on to unfinished business.
Hang on.
Oh, it's already on here.
We have a resolution that was being introduced by Peter Milan, reviewing and approving the amendments to the City of Easton Civil Service Board Rules and Regulations.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Now it's time for discussion.
I'm not going to re-debate this. Obviously, everyone heard my points from 2 weeks ago. My only concern is that if this were to pass, there's nothing precluding the chiefs or the Civil Service Commission from recommending any position below captain or deputy chief to have the same type of examination. And I think if we allow this to happen, I think it's going to open up a Pandora's box. So I'm not going to re-debate it. That's my point. I feel pretty strongly about this. We passed this 4 years ago, I believe, and it hasn't been a problem since. So that's my point.
Any other discussion? Chief, want to address it?
Well-
Anything to address?
I mean, I think the chief, I think there was two things, Mayor. You had asked for an opinion from the solicitor.
Right.
And then the second thing is,
Where's the opinion at?
well, Joel, if you may provide the opinion.
Was on my desk.
And then the second thing that was asked, well, in that same vein, you had also asked the administration through the solicitor's office to look into the language or the issue regarding merit and fitness of an individual. Those were the two issues that we looked at, and there were some comments, and they certainly can be addressed regarding the political appointments and nepotism as well in that same vein. And I think Mr. Shear would address from a high level anyway the first question in his opinion, which could also lead into discussions on the others. The second part of this is that I wanted the Chief Krill to come here and discuss, because there's two issues here. There's policy and then there's operations. And I wanted Chief Krill to talk about the operational aspect. What is it that he's doing, and what's the methodology for moving forward? Because there is a disconnect at times between policy and also operations. Understanding that, policy may have been put together with a certain intent, but over time, operationally things can change. And I think it's important for the council to listen to our chief on his request for this particular change. So if you may, I'll turn it over to Mr. Shear.
Okay.
Mr. Campos, was this opinion circulated to the members of council?
We do have them on my.
Okay, you do have them in front, okay.
There should have been an opinion put on each of the council's chairs.
Yeah, with that, I'll just go over what I think is the more important things that I was looking for without going through the whole analysis. And if you don't mind, you could handwrite at the end of my signature the date, which was I circulated on May 15, 2019, because it's always helpful to see what day this goes back to. But I was on the request was whether you needed to do both an oral and written exam for the promotion. Specifically, we're looking at the promotion for deputy chief, and my review of the civil service provisions adopted by the state applicable to third-class cities. Excuse me. The conclusion was that you have to give an exam, but it can be oral, it could be written, or it could be oral and written. There's no delineation as to what type of exams. We know that for new hires who also have to take physical tests and other testing, we do have an oral and written, and I believe that what you're passing or what's been moved tonight includes oral and written for lieutenants and captains. But for the deputy chiefs, which for about 5 days I thought wasn't even applicable because I had looked at the deputy chiefs as being part of chiefs, as being a particularly administrative position for which civil service shouldn't be applicable. Upon further reading of some of the sections, I changed my opinion and concluded that the state legislature, in a rare moment, did some poor legislation, and it would more likely or more reasonable to interpret the deputy chiefs to be subject to civil service. But when you look at what the purpose is in our department anyway, where the deputy chief is technically a person who just walks into the chief position, it would seem that the same considerations you would give to the chief, you should give for the deputy chief, but that's going to be a legislative issue for someone to consider. With what we're dealing with now, it's civil service decides who the deputy chief is. Civil service board decides what type of testing to use, and if I find nothing wrong with the idea of just an oral exam. The result of that exam would be to come up with a list, and the list should include 3 people. Once that list is created, then on the 14406.1, then I'll read this one section. Council shall make an appointment from the name certified based solely on the merits and fitness of the candidate unless council makes objections to the board regarding one or more individuals on the eligibility list. Now, there's virtually no case law in any of this, so it's a matter of just trying to interpret the plain language. And my opinion would be that if council gets this three-person list, because that's what they have, council asks civil service for the list, civil service provides the list. You look at the list, and for some reason, you can't understand how this person could even be eligible, and you want another name, then you would make your objections. Otherwise, you have your three names, and then you have the right to consider merits and fitness. So how do you consider, and I think you don't have to choose the top name either, because it's, what's the purpose of giving you three names if you don't have some choices? To consider merits and fitness, then at that point, I would think that you would get some information from administration, mainly the fire administration, as to what are the records of these employees. Do they have recommendations based on their experience as to fitness, merits and fitness? And certainly when you consider merits, you'd be considering demerits. Is there any history in the conduct, discipline, et cetera, that could impact the performance in this role for which they're being considered? And I would suggest you'd have to do that because it's all personnel and executive session, so that the civil service part is focused on creating the list through some means of objective testing. And I understand that the fire chief could probably speak better on how that process would work. And then once you have your three names, city council will decide who to recommend for that, who to appoint to that position.
Well, before we go to the fire chief, just for a matter of housekeeping purposes, what you just said, should that be in the civil service rules and regulations?
I thought what you're adopting today is
What you just spoke about with regard
Which
to city
part?
council, about city council?
It's the section that I read, that line is right in the state statute.
Should it be in our civil service rules?
Well, our civil service rules has to be consistent with the state statute. So if we don't have it in there now, I would hope, is there any provision that just refers that you have to be consistent with the state statute?
I'm not the attorney, I don't know.
I don't have the civil service rules in front of me, so
Well, I mean, it's in our packets.
You have the
It's in the
full.
packet. It's in our packet.
I have Exhibit A. I have the packet the way it was given to me from the city clerk.
Right.
I have Exhibit A.
That's what I have too.
Okay.
I don't see anywhere in there where it defers to the state, unless I'm
No,
reading it.
okay, it doesn't,
So
I have it in front of me.
Okay.
This seems fine. This is addressing exactly what you want to address right
Right,
now.
but with regard to city council though, just so I'm crystal clear with you.
This is addressing only the creation of the list.
Right, so
So-
with regards to the promotion then,
Yes.
you just said that they're going to give city council three names. But
we're
nowhere in your dialogue is that reflected in the civil service rules and regulations.
I don't believe you need it in this specific
Okay.
section. You have the state statute to follow. Your rules and regulations create what the Civil Service Board itself is doing,
Right.
creating the testing.
I understand that.
That's a real slippery slope.
What?
If you're trying to keep politics out of it, you're bringing it to city council to make the decision. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. It was like me when I was a school teacher. The principal's not in the teachers union. They had their own union, but they're not in a teachers union.
So my question,
Well, everything, this is, the position of deputy chief is a position coming from the ranks of the captains.
And only the captains.
And the people have made the firefighters themselves have made themselves go up the ranks all through civil service. At some point in time, when it would seem to me, you make administrative decisions. You want to call everything you do here as politics. You could call it politics. I think it's just doing your jobs as legislators.
No, but what I'm saying, you're bringing up three names. Nowhere did I hear the chief's recommendation. So the chief's not making a recommendation of which one of the three he or she
You're
would
going to
like?
consider merits and fitness. I think it's perfectly appropriate for you to be expecting the chief to give you feedback and information to consider in your deliberations.
And Joe, just for clarity, it could be two people. It's not set aside just as 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, if you have one captain who doesn't want to be a deputy chief.
Okay.
Well, there's minimum qualifications for the selection of the deputy chief. And
What are they?
And it says all current officers who under section C, so section 407, promotion procedures, 2C, under promotion of deputy chief, all current officers who have a minimum of 5 years' experience as an officer in the Easton Fire Department shall be considered eligible to take the deputy chief promotional exam. But
Is this from Exhibit A?
This is HR, right?
But, Ms. Weber, you want to just introduce yourself and?
Stephanie Weber, 123 South 3rd Street, Easton, PA. So I think what you guys are confusing is that for the civil service rules, we have our own City of Easton civil service rules, and then there's the third-class city civil service rules that we follow. So the third-class city civil service rules that we follow are pretty vague, which is why we have our own City of Easton civil service rules that kind of define some of the procedures that are done within our processes. So our City of Easton civil service rules do reflect what the third-class city states, and then we don't follow the necessarily the state civil service rules. We fall because we fall under the third-class city.
But he just said, though, that...
What he was quoting was from the third-class city. He was saying state, but he was referring to the third-class.
Right, no, I get that, but what I'm saying is if that's the requirement, though, so we're not following the state rule then.
We are, yeah, so that
But
requirement.
it's not coming to us.
You're dealing with two different aspects here. The third-class city code and the civil service sections governs how you create lists and who makes the appointments. Our civil service rules governs only what the civil service board does, and how they create the list. Once they've done that job, then the third-class city code will take over. Our civil service rules doesn't govern that anymore. Now you're dealing with in this particular case, 14406.1 dealing with promotions. You have other sections dealing with appointments of the officers. But the third-class city code is basically the full roadmap. Your local rules is the partial roadmap for the function that the civil service board itself plays.
So do we need a step? I'm sorry, go ahead.
So is the City of Easton Civil Service Board actually the one recommending the verbal test, the verbal exam only for the
Yeah, we
deputy
had
chief?
2 meetings with them discussing the pros and cons of having just an oral test as opposed to having a written and oral test. They took a week to deliberate about it and then came back to us and voted yes, that they will change it to
just
the
for the
verbal.
oral test.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's nothing precluding them from coming back to us with a change for every other promotion then, for oral examinations.
It would have to go through the civil service
But there's
board.
nothing precluding the chiefs to lobby them and ask them for the same change then, for lieutenants or sergeants or...
No, because the third-class city says written or oral. It doesn't define what the test is.
No, but Mr. Milan's correct. I mean, this is, anybody could say, let's try to change it, but you're adopting, city council's adopting that change. So if you don't think it's a good idea, you could say, no, that's, we don't think that's a good suggestion for the amendment of the civil service rules. I don't think this thing has changed. I'm not aware that it changes like every time there's going to be another promotion. It's been pretty consistent, and the thing that's maybe been, the thing that is somewhat cloudy is the exact position of deputy chief, because there was a period of time that it appeared deputy chiefs would not be under civil service.
But you made a rule that they are part of the civil service, though, correct?
I've come to the conclusion that under the 2015 amendments,
Right.
the language that they used would lead me to conclude that they intended to include them. I have no idea why. It would be nice if they gave you a legislative history to explain what makes them tick.
Right. So,
Chief Mike Krill, 11 North 6th Street, Easton. I want to say my own address all the time.
Of course I have it.
Yes. I think one point that's being missed here is that when we're talking about lieutenants and captains versus the deputy chief's position, the lieutenants and captains fall under the bargaining unit agreement. One of the checks to what Mr. Milan is alluding to is that there would be a grievance filed immediately by the local 713 under the collective bargaining agreement that we would be in violation of the promotional practices for lieutenant and captain. So that issue, I'm trying to calm that issue and say that that wouldn't be possible to have us go in and try to change that position. The difference is the deputy chief's position, in my eyes, is managerial. And I think it's a different role. And in a few minutes, if Ms. Weber's finished, I will read a statement to council that I prepared on the process and why I believe that we should be using a different method for deputy chief than we are using for the lieutenants and captains.
Well, I mean, with regards to your argument about the bargaining agreement, my question to you is, does the third class city code supersede the CBA then, with regards to the regulations of the state?
The bargaining unit itself, that's now been well established through case law, some rulings that the deputy chief, because it's in most organizations, which would include the way that, well, we have a specific ruling involving the city of Easton, where the deputy chief was found to be not in the bargaining unit, and the detailed analysis had to do with the administrative role that that deputy chief plays versus other roles. So it's been by administrative rulings. It has nothing. It's not in the third class city code at all, as far as you're talking about collective bargaining agreement.
No, my question was, does the third class city code supersede that regulation regarding in the CBA that he's referring to with regards to the testing?
We're talking about two different
I know we are.
things.
I'm asking you a question now. I'm asking, does the third class city code supersede his comment regarding the CBA and the promotions where they require testing?
No.
No, I mean,
CBA rules.
well, no, wait. There's two.
So,
if I may,
sure.
And I'm not quite sure what the question is. So excuse me. The collective bargaining agreement, anything could be negotiated, but the civil service rule is going to preempt as far as you can't just ignore what the state requires to assure appropriate civil service. But I'm saying there was no inconsistency between the determination of who could be in a bargaining unit versus how you appoint people under the civil service rules. However, the analysis that they used in saying that deputy chiefs would not be in the bargaining unit was what led me initially to believe that you could appoint deputy chiefs without civil service. And it was only when I actually went backwards and saw a different section that I couldn't reconcile unless I accepted the fact that they intended, when they used the word chiefs, they meant police and fire chief, I guess, not fire chief and deputy chief, fire chief, which is what I thought made sense. But it's a big mistake when you look at statutes to try to use common sense.
Well, now the union is, because I handle all the grievances that come into the city, we do settle a lot of grievances, if you will. And this year there's been a couple, maybe a little bit more than a couple, that had to deal with whether or not the city was following a third class city, third class city regs. Now, the union's quick to obviously acknowledge for their membership when we are not following third class city regs or any other of the regulatory laws that are out across the state. Obviously, we have civil service state laws and also third class city regs, et cetera. It's multi-layered and it's a little complicated. And then there's the CBA also in our local civil service ordinance makes it a little bit confusing. Mr. Milan, could you provide can you give me a scenario to describe your question?
Real simply, here's the question. So let's just say the chief decided he wanted to go to the civil service and say, you know what, I want to make oral examinations for lieutenants and captains. They say, no problem, we'll do it for you. It comes to us and we pass it. That's the scenario.
That would be a just slipped my mind.
Well, I mean, from what he's saying, it supersedes
labor
the
practice.
CBA.
No, it can't.
I don't know, but he just said it though.
Can't supersede the CBA. The CBA has been known. There's CBAs across the country, across the state that are in direct violation of state regs. State regs says you get 70% pension and getting 70. We're giving our arbitrator offered 75.
Right. No, but I'm saying.
But I'm saying the CBA, in my mind, rules.
I'm not sure how it can supersede the state law. If the Civil Service Board recommends a change to the lieutenant and the captain for oral examinations only, they approve it, it comes to us, we approve it too. How's that not possible?
Well, it's not in the collective bargaining agreement
Yeah, I
how
don't-
you go through promotions because it recognizes it wouldn't be a proper topic of bargaining.
So, I mean,
Well, what would happen in this, what would happen in this case, because there's a
The
debate right
lieutenant and the captain are in the CBA.
right, but that's
No, they are. I'm not talking about I'm not talking about promotions. They're on the
How they
CBA.
get there.
The
Yeah,
process, right.
Well, so in this particular case, if we take this hypothetical example, and based on the experience here, rightfully so, the union could challenge the city's practice due to the language in the third-class city code. And they could escalate that, and that could go to arbitration, in which an arbitrator would then rule on whether or not the language, as, you know, Mr. Scheer just pointed out, is intended to be ambiguous or specific. Ambiguous meaning it's up to administrators and managers to determine whether or not it's going to be a written or oral or both. Now, the other thing that may throw a wrench into this is that the union could argue past practice as well. So, to answer your question, unless it's challenged and it's taken to an arbitrator or to court, I would lean on the opinion on the solicitor.
Right, and his opinion was clear. It's not the process. That whether it's an examination, written or oral, is not in the CBA. So what I'm saying is,
Can I jump in?
Sure.
It's not specifically in the CBA, but since the lieutenants and the captains are under the CBA,
right.
as soon as the process would be changed from what was past practice, the union would immediately file a grievance.
Right,
The difference with the deputy chief is that the deputy chief's position is not part of the bargaining unit, and as a result, has no representation from the bargaining unit.
I completely understand that. What I'm saying is that it doesn't preclude them from making the change and sending it to us for approval. Then, does it? It doesn't preclude them. It doesn't preclude you from going to the Civil Service Commission to offer this amendment for lieutenants and captains,
But
does it?
why would I do that when I know it's going to be legally challenged by the union and I'm probably going to lose?
Yeah, Mr. Milan, on this particular case in labor relations, I typically would pick up the phone, call the union president, and say, we want to make a change. Are you open to this change? In some cases, in which we're doing right now, they would say, yes, we're open to the change. The chief could give you an example or two where we're working with the union right now to make some changes which would deviate from past practice. In another particular case, in this particular case, the hypothetical scenario that you're giving us, I will tell you that it's probably not best practice for us to move forward on a change like that without engaging the union first. The only time in which right now we're keeping our ground, if you will, is if the best practice is in the city's favor. If the past practice is in the city's favor. Right now, we are being challenged with several grievances in which past practice is in the city's favor. In your particular scenario, I would say we're talking a lot about the hypothetical, but in this particular case with the deputy chief, I don't think we would see a challenge to that at all. I would prefer. I would.
I mean, you could see you could see a challenge from someone who didn't get the promotion. That's possible, correct?
Who?
I don't know who these people are. I'm not mentioning names. I don't know names. I'm saying you could hypothetically have a challenge from someone who was affected by this change. It's possible, correct?
Anything's possible.
I mean,
we're thinking hypothetically here. I mean, we can
any part of the process can be challenged.
Sure.
That's just a fact of life.
And I think that's where my argument lies with the testing, a written test, so that there is one additional step of weeding out somebody who may not pass a test. When you have both examinations that are in the process, you have that ability to, select somebody.
Well, at this point, could I possibly enter into the record a summary of what I believe should be the process for the deputy chief's position?
And before you go,
I'm sorry,
Chief, your primary reason for having this position in place is administrative?
Yes.
Okay.
To make it clear, the deputy chief position is almost like the co-chief's position. I work with that person on a daily basis to keep the department running. We do all the administrative functions with City Hall. I'm trying to actually deepen that position of deputy chief so that when I do retire, when I do decide to retire, that the person in that position is ready and prepared to step into this position.
If it's the choice.
That's right.
Mike, when you're done, can I have a copy of that, please?
Oh, certainly.
And that's a good point, Mrs. Volcano. It still has to be someone
That's right.
that, and that's why I think the deputy chief's position is so different. It's not, and I'll support the union to the hilt, but there's got to be a division of labor between a manager and a union personnel.
Oh, I'm not.
But the third class.
I know,
Yeah.
and I'm agreeing with you that,
I didn't hear what she said. What did she say?
she said it
said-
with the approval of the mayor.
Well,
and,
he
and
makes
city.
the final
Well, I
decision.
think, but it goes back to council,
He
right,
brings
Mr.
it
Shear? So, I mean, I think the mayor is part of council, so they would come back to the 7 of us in executive session. So, correct?
Well, I'm suggesting that if you're going to be reviewing fitness for purpose and merits, you should do it in executive session because
enough.
the personnel files should not be open to the public.
So should this be somewhere, should this be documented in some kind of ordinance then?
No, I don't think you need an ordinance. I think we have a state ordinance that says how you select it.
Right.
And you just do it yourself. You have your own procedures to do things.
So we don't have to we don't have to review it in executive session then, if that's what you're saying?
Excuse me?
No.
We don't have to review it in executive session then?
There's no regulation. I'm just suggesting, why do you do it with all personnel matters? We don't have any we don't have any ordinance that I know of that says personnel matters are done in executive
But when it
session.
comes to promotions, I would think we wouldn't be a little more clear, wouldn't we, in the civil service rules?
I don't.
Excuse me.
In the civil service rules.
The civil service rule says they're going to give, the civil service rules governs how the civil service board will operate to create a 3-person list that goes to council. That's what the civil service board's function is for this particular purpose.
At the state level.
The state passed the ordinance that describes this. We could have changed it in our home rule charter. We did not address it there. So now that you have the list, and now what do you do when you make a hire like that? I'm saying you don't need an ordinance for us to advise you that you can consider what do you believe as city council people will help you make that decision. I would think it would be asking.
The chief's recommendation is what I was going
Well, that's why I would think that you would ask.
I don't understand why.
I would think you would do two things.
I think that's where politics enters in. I'm sorry.
There's two things. There would be recommendations, and there would also be looking at their records of the applicants.
You know, the problem is
There's
the best football player doesn't make the best football coach.
That's right.
And that's unfortunate because
so I don't.
you're asking a person to pick the best player to be the coach, and it may not be the best choice. And that's what you're doing. You put into the responsibility of the chief or the director of any department, and I've always allowed they select their supervisors because they have to work with them.
Exactly. Well, you're going to get your 3 names. You pick who you want from that. What criteria you use as city council is up to you. I would think that what would be important is what the person in the deputy chief's position specifically, what the chief believes, who the chief believes would be best for that position and why, and get the reasons why. And then I think you'd also want to look at the files of the applicants, and from that you make a reasoned decision. Whether your inclination is to accept what the chief recommends, it's perfectly fine. But when you talk about politics getting in the way,
Small P. Just you know, the chief brings up the 3 names, and well, I don't like him. This guy said this about me. This guy did that, and all of a sudden, the chief's choice isn't selected because of something that he did to a council member or to one of the decision makers. The decision maker is the chief.
Right.
And if you don't like the chief's decision, then you fire the chief. But I mean, I don't understand it. I go back to my school teaching days. I can't imagine that the superintendent would be told, "Here's 5 names. Pick a principal."
No, not
You- you-
without.
you know, you-
To the school board, he'd have to present.
You have 7 people on, you have 7 people on city council. You're almost the size of a jury. You're actually larger than a jury in federal court where you only have six people.
Right.
And you have your deliberations, and I would hope that you all have your say and you all have your oath of office, and that in that process and with the feedback you get, you're going to make the best possible decision for the citizens of Easton. And everything, I mean, you want to define I don't understand what political gets
I
into.
don't mean politics with a big P. I mean with a little P. Just the whole process. There's politics in every corporation, in every school district, in every city. It doesn't have to be an elected official that's politically. You can have people who are political that are just employees.
When we deal with civil service, the concern and the reason we have the civil service rules and regulations is to provide at least a filter to make sure that decisions aren't purely the people who become eligible have a degree of merit.
That's the problem. I don't have a problem with any of that.
Mayor,
So once you're there, now you guys do your jobs.
Mayor, I think to echo your point, and I think you made my point honestly, is that if you had one extra layer in the process, I think you take away the politics of it. I really do. That's my only argument. I think to your point is very valid.
It's so easy for a council member to say, "Oh, this person got a 96, and that person that he's recommending only got a 92."
But it's a blended score, Mayor. It's a blended score.
I understand that. That's why that's even worse.
But your argument is that you wouldn't take away politics from it. If you have a written score on a test and it's weighted, whatever they feel is weighted, and you basically give us a package. This guy got a 92. On the oral, he got a 76. We can evaluate those applicants in a more objective way, as opposed to just an oral interview.
The managerial skill set is somewhat different than the firefighter skill set. And I think the chief is the person who works with these people every day who can say, okay, this person has the managerial skill set to lead this company in my absence.
Mayor, I'm not even questioning. You're absolutely 100% right. And frankly, just for the record, I support the chiefs picking their own people. But the state civil service rules are clear. You heard Mr. Scheer say it. I've been fighting for this for 2 weeks now. So all I'm saying is, as an extra layer to accommodate the mayor's concern of politics playing into this process, is that there is a written test. And how it's weighted, that would be up to the civil service board with your recommendation. It's just an extra layer of protection for the people who are coming in front of us.
I would want to know what skill set we're testing for.
Mayor, I don't know. Honestly. I'm not.
But I would want to know that.
It's not that you're testing for a skill set. I mean, if like for promotion exams, they're given books.
Yes, I know.
Given books.
But for lieutenant and for captain.
Right. So if we give them
Not
a
for
book,
deputy chief.
right, and we give them a book and we tell them to study this book and we give them a test of 50 questions, that's it then.
Could we
Mr.
possibly hear Chief Krill's statement?
Sure.
Yeah, before I start my statement, I'd like to comment on that.
Sure.
The argument becomes, we're going to make a decision, probably the way you're describing, probably on the difference of 3 or 4 multiple choice questions. Is that the way we determine a manager of a department?
Chief,
So we give them 6 weeks notice. You know what happens with a promotional exam? They go grab the books for 6 weeks.
Right.
They cram for 6 weeks. They memorize the information and they pass the test. What we want is someone in that position that actually understands what he has, the knowledge he has, and is being able to use that knowledge to plan for the department's future. It's not about 3 or 4, and this is usually what's going to divide number 1 from number 2 from number 3 is going to be 3 or 4 multiple choice questions. Is that the way we want to decide?
My amendment, my solution to this doesn't take that away from you or us. It adds an extra layer. That's all it does. I mean, I'm making your point for you though. I'm just trying to give you an extra. It's actually us. We're making the decision. It does remove politics then.
Yeah, if I may, I just want to be clear that the opinion that I gave and I was looking at is just that it is okay to pass this change in the regulations to allow for only an oral examination. Right. I didn't make the judgments why. I would rely on the people who suggested in the first place. But I will say that the idea of written multiple choice questions to me, just in my experience, is totally meaningless. Partially the way the chief said, when I taught business law, I burdened myself by giving essays, which required very long explanations and to see how these people think, because unfortunately, some of the dumber people do great in multiple choice tests because they don't think enough.
But the only difference is we can weigh it less. That's the difference here. We can make it weighed less.
You're dealing with such a small pool. When you're dealing with deputy chiefs,
Right.
you're dealing with such a small pool because you're dealing with your captains. You already have a crew. You already have a group of
No
people that
question.
you've. So
No
so-
disagreement. I'm
so
just
th-
saying.
so this regulation is. I mean the resolution before you tonight is simply to accept this civil service rule that for a deputy chief only, an oral exam is good enough because of the unique features of the deputy, of what the chief and what the city should be looking for as to the most qualified pool, because we're looking at 3 people of applicants to be eligible for deputy chief. So now I leave the rest to you.
Chief Crow.
One of the issues you're discussing is you're saying, okay, we're going to add an extra layer. The problem with extra layers, it becomes an administrative burden. I'm not saying that to say, oh well, I'm just lazy and I want to do less. But I've been waiting to solidify my leadership team for 4 months already. If we add extra layers, we did some numbers. It could take up to 6 months to add that additional layer to get a test produced for the city, to go through all the regulations that we're in, because you got to give them a study period before the test and all those things. This is going to just move the goalpost out. Let me finish, please. It's going to move that goalpost further and further out. Every day that I'm bogged down with this discussion, and I got 4 people in the fire department that are in limbo because they're in temporary positions that they may be out of tomorrow. It not only causes that problem, but if we don't do this quickly enough to stabilize those positions, and we have to start losing positions from the leadership team because we can't fill them permanently, then what's going to happen is it's going to cost this city a lot more money in overtime. So it's not, Mr. Moran, you're only looking at one small part of the puzzle. The puzzle is much larger. It has many pieces. And it really is going to be an extreme burden on me if we don't get this thing solidified. I have so many things I want to do in this department to make the department better. You know what? For the last 3 weeks, I have done nothing to make the department better because I've been tied up with administrative functions dealing with this promotional process, with the exam process for new hires. Okay, we have to move on. We have to get by this point. We can't argue over the a little decision whether we're doing an oral exam or we're doing a multiple choice exam. I'm expressing my opinion that I don't feel a multiple choice exam has a place in picking a manager. An oral exam has much more depth, okay? And if I could now read my statement, it may help clarify some of the points I'm trying to make. Okay, why an oral exam? Captains and lieutenants are already tested to determine their level of knowledge. We then provide them with the skills to direct and control firefighters on the fire ground. The deputy chief's position is a different level of leadership, managerial, not supervisory. It requires other assets such as communications, interpersonal qualities, confidence, self-awareness, and ethical qualities. The traits we are looking for are not identified through a multiple choice testing process. It requires a deeper probing of the aforementioned skills and attributes. Oral exams test the ability of a candidate to think on their feet. It allows the candidate to show they can apply their knowledge to real or hypothetical situations. The candidate demonstrates that they can diagnose problems and recommend actions to solve them. They can show that they can justify their decisions with their knowledge and understanding. It discerns whether a candidate is just relying on memorization of facts or instead on a clear understanding of their comprehensive knowledge. Oral exams allow candidates presented with real or simulated situations that incorporate the complications of the workplace to explain how they will handle the situation. Evaluators can see how they react using their knowledge, their thoughts, their feelings, their attitudes to develop an action plan. The exam measures their ability to communicate and gauge their understanding of content while allowing examiners to probe further to better understand their abilities. Our exam will consist of 3 parts: qualifications and abilities, situational questions, fire service issues. The questions will be probative and require thought, explanation, not just a short answer. The process will be administered by executive leadership of local career fire departments. The duration of the exam will take between 60 and 90 minutes. This is not intended to be a shortcut, but instead a better way of evaluating our senior leadership, although it does have an advantage of shortening the process because it is completed and scored immediately. Thank you.
Mike, can I have that then, please? Your statement.
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Can we call the question?
Yeah, we're going to take a vote.
That's what we're doing.
Okay, Mr. Ettinger,
Aye.
Mr. Milan,
No.
Mr. O'Connell,
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles,
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano,
Aye.
Mayor Panto,
Aye.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
New business, Miss
Well, we have
Madam Clerk.
under unfinished business, no,
Oh, we did that.
you're right. No, the 513 Ferry
Oh,
Street.
that's right. That's right.
Okay. Well, initially.
Actually, that's new business.
Yeah, that's new business.
That's new business.
513.
My error, I
No problem.
apologize.
Not a problem. You're fired.
Thank you.
You'd miss us.
All right. We'll put that at the bottom then. Okay, we have a resolution being introduced by James Ettinger, amending the 2019 salary and wages, where we're increasing the firefighter count from 36 to 39.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
We have a resolution being introduced by Sandra Volcano approving a sub-recipient agreement with the Easton Redevelopment Authority.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second discussion. Roll call.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
We have a resolution being introduced by Mr. Brown approving a master lease agreement with Lafayette Ambassador Bank for vehicles.
Move.
Second.
Moved in second discussion. Go ahead, Dr. Ruggles.
On these leases that we passed one, I think it was last
Yep.
council meeting, and then we had one here. Are those leases such that the vehicles are maintained other than in our city garage, or are they? I mean, is this something that
It's basically a financing mechanism, so we
it's
do.
just financing?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Roll call.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
We have a resolution being introduced by Mr. O'Connell approving a 2-year contract with TR Property Management and Maintenance.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion?
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
We have a resolution also being introduced by Mr. O'Connell approving an agreement with Keystone Inspection Agency.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion?
I just wanted to say on the Keystone agreement that just so it's clear, this is a sort of a pay-as-you-go agreement. We only pay Keystone for services that they have performed, and it's not a retainer type agreement.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Aye.
Also under new business, we're introducing, Ken Brown is introducing bill number 13, where it will be amending the 2019 Recreation Fund budget, as Mayor Panto spoke about earlier.
So introduce.
Second.
Just
No, it's just
introducing.
introduced.
Okay.
And then back to
Oh, that's
the
513.
HDC thing for 513 Ferry Street. Everything, from what I understand, was approved by the HDC except the front door and the side light.
I will make the amendment to accept the door as designed with the side light to override the HDC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Discussion?
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Volker. I noticed that the HDC approved it unanimously except for your abstention, and you abstained because you had a conflict of interest. I don't know if you can explain what the conflict of interest is, but I
Very
was
well.
wondering why you would have a conflict of interest then, but now you're here advocating and you don't seem to have a conflict of interest, so.
I abstained because I'm working, or the general rule at the HDC is, I am an architect here in town, so if me or any of the other members of the HDC, if we're working with the client who brings the business forward, that we don't try and interfere with their decision. So I abstained because that's my conflict of interest, as I'm representing the applicant, if you will.
Mr. O'Connell, I believe that what happened with the HDC, because of the desire to get architects on the board and the recognition that they're not going to be precluded from doing work within the city, they recognize that you're going to have applications, so that the appropriate move is that you then disqualify yourself from participating in that negotiation without disqualifying from yourself from your actual position as the agent of the applicant. It's kind of a odd scenario, but I think it's out of necessity, because otherwise you wouldn't get the sufficient qualified architects to sit on that board, even with the realtors. So it's sort of an odd situation, because you actually have a board member who's here as an advocate, but what you have to do is you have to look at Mr. Volker here as an architect only, not a member of the HDC board.
Okay, I understand that, but I just wanted to say that I consider the members of the HDC the experts in this matter, and I rely on their opinion before I make my own vote on these things. And the other members all voted unanimously not to approve this door, and I would just find it troubling for us to overturn the HDC's recommendation on that.
Well, we've done it before, though.
Windows,
Windows,
siding, bricking.
The color across the street, 525 Northampton Street, we overrode them.
Yeah, across the street.
So, I mean, I think it's,
Dr. Ruggles?
I just a question while you're here. It was stated that the only difference is that the two side panels on the door, but as you were explaining it earlier, the HDC also said that this dummy door.
Correct, that was their recommendation.
Oh, a recommendation, not a requirement?
That's what
Correct.
it says on their document.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Volker, I have my concern is as grave as Mr. O'Connell's, because I will ultimately be the responsible body to approve or not approve. But I do have a concern about the width of the skylights, the side lights rather. They're not really side lights, they're really large window panes. Is there any way you can narrow them down? The photos you showed us were side lights. Not, they weren't, I mean, if you could just say approved one.
They approved one, though.
One, I know, I don't,
That size.
I don't understand that.
So, I mean, I think they.
But if you can make that front door similar to the doors that he showed us,
Can you reduce your side lights?
Yes, I can. I could that. But when I look on the one on the same Ferry Street, is almost the same size. When I show the doors I show you just now on it.
no, they weren't the same size at all. They were about 6 inches wide. My house has two side lights on each side of the door, one on each side of the door, and they're about 6, 7 inches wide. You have one, that's
Yeah, I
right.
have one, and it's
Yeah.
about this wide, about.
About 6
say,
inches.
Yeah.
One issue is he's already got the frame built.
All right.
You got to speak into the microphone, please.
Okay. You want me to make it smaller?
Narrower,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, we're asking you. We haven't decided yet.
Okay.
We're asking.
Are the signs made?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I would rather not put a constituent through another expense to shorten up a side light. The HTC already gave you permission for one, correct? Is that correct?
No permission, they didn't, they basically wanted to.
But they saw the one, though, they were okay with that, correct?
Correct.
Fair enough. Okay.
To illustrate the recommendation.
Fair enough. Okay. So I think there's a motion on the table.
So we have a motion by Peter, seconded by Sandy, to override the HDC's initial decision.
And to accept it. Yes, override. That's correct.
So we're going to take a vote on that.
Any further discussion, or is there a call to question? Call to question, go ahead.
Mr. O'Connell?
No.
Dr. Ruggles?
No.
Mrs. Volcano?
Yes.
Mayor Panto?
No.
Mr. Brown?
No.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mr. Milan?
Aye.
What's the vote?
Get past.
We lost.
4 noes, 3 yeses.
So,
So you'd have to abide by the HDC rules.
No, they don't have the rules.
Well,
Resubmit.
for us.
No, now the decision, because the HDC recommended that you accept
Everything but the
a
door.
certain amount of work and deny the door. So now there would have to be a motion to accept the recommendation of the HDC, which is a split decision. I mean,
Okay.
it's not a split decision. It's approves of most of the work but denies the door. So it would be, the motion should be the acceptance of the of the approval of the recommendation of the HDC.
The way it was originally.
The way it was originally submitted.
Okay. So you want to vote to do how we're doing it now?
We're going to go back to what it says on the consent agenda, resolution approving
I move that we
certificate of
accept
appropriateness
that.
for 513 Ferry Street.
So Kenny's making a motion to accept it, the way it was submitted. Who's seconding it? I'm sorry.
I'll second.
Okay.
Roll call.
All right. Mr. Milan?
no.
Ink's running out, sorry. Mr. Ettinger?
No.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mrs. Volcano?
Nay.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connell?
Aye.
Now, let's be clear so that he understands. We're accepting what the historical district had offered, but everything but the door.
And it
So-
says that on the certificate when you get that.
So-
It'll state that there.
And for whatever it's worth, the applicant can modify the door, whether it's a matter of the size, and go
Correct.
back to the process and get an approval. So it doesn't mean you have to give up. It means
No,
that
exactly.
you can try yet another
See this
choice.
door?
I can't see this
It's an
far away.
expensive door.
The-
I mean,
The
There's going to be costs associated with this. So
And does he have to pay to reapply? Yeah.
everything.
Back to the.
He has to get the door shortened now.
HTC.
Well, I can tell you, we can waive the fee to go back as a second time if it's possible.
Mayor, with all due respect, that's an expensive door. Would you?
The door I didn't have a problem with. It's the side lights I had the problem with.
I know,
the
but,
door's,
I mean-
the door's a nice door. It's a beautiful door.
He already expensed this. So
Because he went ahead and did work
Well,
without
I mean-
getting approval.
I mean,
That's unfortunate. It's no different than the gentleman, Mr. Couch, down at the Highlands, who wanted to expand his driveway. Instead of our code department saying, "Oh, you need to go get HOA approval first," they charge him the $500 to go to zoning board, and then the HOA turns him down. So the guy's out $500.
But we also
That's not fair.
But we also accepted the lady from 525 North Hammond Street with her door.
Yeah, the door I have no problem with.
But she had solid too, though.
And that's what I would tell Scott. Those wide side lights become windows. They're not side lights. That's my only issue. I would have voted, and I still did. So. Okay, before we get to public comment, I just want to mention that this is a busy weekend again, as every weekend is. But I just want to remind City Council that May 26th on Sunday is the Southside Civic Memorial Day celebration.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock at McKean Park. On May 27th is the the Memorial Day Parade. The Memorial Day Parade that starts at 6th and Walnut. You got to be there by roughly 9:30 if you want to be in front of the parade. And on May 28th at March School is Cops Day. Cops Day at the, what time is that, Chief? The March Cops Day? 9 o'clock. Okay. So those that want to go on May 28th, be a nice thing to see with the police officers. All right, now at this point, we have public comment on any topic at all. Yes, Mr. Vanderveer. I can't believe they let you in with that.
I asked before I brought it in.
All right.
All right, my name is Pastor Larry Vanderveer. I'm 331 South Main Street in Nazareth, PA. I'm the administrator and founder of the Coalition of Feral Cats of Lehigh Valley, which is a nonprofit 501c3 organization in Pennsylvania. Since you guys gave me the contract, it was about almost 2 to 3 weeks after you said you had a contract that I got a signed contract. People ask me why we haven't been trapping, because we don't go forward until we have everything in line we're supposed to be. After that, we got 2 phone calls, and we set cameras up like we're supposed to do. 48 to 72 hours, we're going to be trapping on 3 different localities in Easton within the next week. We're not your typical TNR group. All right? Most of your TNR groups trap, neuter, return to cats. We trap, neuter, return to cats, and we have the kids, we try to get them adopted out, but we take control of the colony and make sure it's healthy, taken care of. I got an email sent to me with something that I stated on our coalition Facebook page, and Mayor Pantel got the same thing. I'd like to read that to you if you don't mind. It'll take me about 2 minutes.
You have 5.
Count 5.
I'm timing you.
Okay, and I was really upset when I found this. Today, my faith in man nasty, formerly mankind, has even gotten worse. I found a metal snare that could kill an animal and a long metal rod used to beat an animal at one of the colonies we were taking care of. If ever I find someone doing this, I will arrest them from a citizen's arrest, handcuff them, and turn them over to the police, after which I will sign a criminal complaint. People are not only vicious to each other, but also to God's creations. Many have a sick and morbid brain, and should be put in a cage as they are no more than a barbaric creature. Very, very sad, Pastor Larry Vanderveer. So I got this sent to me that was sent to Mayor Sal Pantel also, from Carol Dos Santos. These threats are not the way to go about getting things done. He is threatening avid groups who have trapped for 30 years will now give up because of these threats. Your city's cat population is out of control and will only get worse without the help of these knowledgeable groups. I, and homeless cats in need, have trapped in numerous occasions in your city. I paid for my rescue to get these cats fixed. The other groups, Nats, Cats, Fur, have also done the same thing. Please consider speaking to us so that we can continue to help your city. If these rescues, instead of starting to beat us up and help us, we get a lot more done. Here's what I found at the column. This is a snare. Here's how I found
You got to use the microphone, Larry.
This is a snare, metal snare, that when it's down on the ground, you can't see it. It's put on, this was tied to a root. Okay? This is set up like this. Just big enough for an animal to get their head in. They don't see it. They pull through it. All of a sudden, it's around their head. The more they pull, the more it takes their neck and cuts their neck and cuts the throat and kills the cat. If it goes into the paw, it maims the paw. This is a 1/2 inch galvanized grounding rod. As you can see, it's bent. This is solid steel. I'm a weightlifter. I can't bend this. In order for this to be bent, it had to be struck so hard on the culvert where this cat lives that it bent. It missed the cat, but that's what it did to the culvert. And if any group, that letter came from a group saying that I was attacking them, I didn't mention any group. I said anybody, if we catch them with these kind of things on a colony that we're in charge of, we will prosecute them. In our contract with the city, it states that right in it, that if we do catch people doing these things, we are to prosecute them. We follow the guidelines
Can I cut the conversation short? Because these people are here because I'm getting like inundated with phone calls. Larry, you introduced yourself as Pastor Larry Vanderveer, and you're founder of the organization, and you're a 501c3. Are you a 501c3?
Yes, we are.
Okay, because I'm being told you're not. You have to come to the microphone. Sorry. Okay, so you are.
Yes.
So your contract with the city of Easton, Mr. Lisinecki, summarize that contract for me.
The contract allows for the coalition to basically be in charge of the TNR program within the city. I believe the recommended vet clinic that would do the neutering is no-nonsense neutering, and that's spelled out in the contract. But I believe it also allows for other organizations to trap, neuter, and return as well. I think that's a...
So we will pay invoices to No Nonsense Neutering.
Correct.
Okay. Would you come up? Come on up and give your name and address, please.
Good evening. Martha Kahn, president of No Nonsense Neutering, 1044 North Quebec Street. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak. I actually met with you 2 falls ago with Mr. Vanderveer, and we stood together here and discussed the reason why that having a trap, neuter, return was important for your city. So we're absolutely on the same page here. Okay? I was not aware that you as a council had voted monies in 2018. I realize that you may have other clinics locally. I don't think any of them offer the services that we do. But we went the entire year last year without spending a nickel that was appropriated. We could have done 100 cats last year. We go into this year, and then I just found out a month ago that you had signed a contract. In it, you state that No Nonsense Neutering is the vet clinic. In it, it also states that we're going to be invoice you directly. It doesn't say anything in there about whom we invoice, where the invoice is going, and with all of the municipalities that we work with locally, and there are several right around you, we require a contract for services. For the trap, neuter, return part, we are the professional provider of services. Everyone else here, Larry, myself, and the women that came tonight, we're all volunteers. We provide, No Nonsense Neutering provides the professional services. So I sent each of you, I realize you're very busy, but I wanted you to understand that for us to participate, and we want to be involved in this program, that we will have to have a contract with the city. I also want to say to you that everyone that came tonight is very passionate about seeing this happen. You have had a cat issue for years, and nothing has been addressed. We do want to work together, but I will tell you, and I hope you understand, I've run No Nonsense for 11 years. We work with the people who are feeding the cats. 90% of the cats that come to our clinic come from the people who are feeding them in the backyard, in their row home. We, if they're elderly, disabled, they don't have a car, that's when we assist the TNR services. But I'm going to encourage you to let the individuals in your city participate, to get in their cars and bring the cats to us, and not limit it to the Coalition for the Feral Cats of the Lehigh Valley. You're going to shoot this program in the foot. You're going to limit the accessibility of services if you do not allow all of us to participate. Thank you.
No, Ms. Scott, is there a way to determine that you determine a cat to be
not domestic but feral?
Well, in our experience, every cat that's put in a trap, that goes in our trap, is not going to love being in there. So once it gets into our clinic, our staff is very trained. We've done, last year alone, we did 7,000 feral cats. We've just opened our 5th clinic. We have a way to, once the cat is there, to kind of look and see if the cat is really responding to us or if they're truly going to hiss and whatever. So I think it takes some time. But yes, I do think we can do that. And I think
My only concern would be people taking the cat, their domesticated cat to you to be neutered to save the money, and we pay for it. I mean, it can't be taxpayer subsidized. Feral cats are an issue and a problem in our neighborhoods, but domestic cats aren't.
keep one thing in mind. 98% of the cats that we're talking about are truly wild cats. There are people that throw their cats outside.
Oh,
Okay, they throw them outside because they don't want to fix them. And the cat is reproducing outside. In my opinion, you should be happy if we get it fixed.
Okay.
It's going to be outside, it's going to be ear-tipped, but it's not going to be breeding. And there are truly lost and stray cats out there. We are encouraging people to microchip their pets so that if one comes in, the first thing we do is we scan for a microchip. So that pet's going to get back home. But I will say to you, your concern is valid. However, that's a very small percentage of people that throw the cats out, but they still should be neutered and vaccinated.
Okay. Answers my
So
question.
I don't know the process of getting the contract to me, but it needs to happen.
I'm just a little concerned about why it didn't get to you. Mark,
Me too.
Who signed the contract?
I signed it, and the city council resolution was to sign the mayor, authorizing the mayor and the city controller to sign it. What we signed was a contract that allows Mr. Vanderveer to collect the cat, but there was concerns about that. So in the contract, we said we would only pay no nonsense neutering for an actual, and they would invoice us.
Well, I meant who from TNR signed the contract?
Oh, Mr. Vanderveer.
And Mr. Vanderveer, how come you didn't get the word out to?
I'll say again, please.
Why, if you signed the contract with the city, and you did not get the word out to the other organization?
I most certainly did. Matter of fact, Mrs. Khan.
Well,
it's right on her Facebook. Even the Mrs. Khan, she called me up, emailed me about putting it on her Facebook page and on her website. She said, "Go ahead."
Well,
But
it
and I also
seems to me
said
that
to
there's
Mark-
some sort of a communication problem between these two groups and not the city.
No, that's not true. The last time we were here at the meeting, I asked the group that was here with us to help us. They told me, no way in God's creation.
No, they said they would not help you because you were not a 501c3.
No, it's not what they said. But anyway,
Hold on. I'll have your chance at the podium, but you got to come up to the podium.
I really think it's a great idea that she has a contract. I told Mark that before that. He should set something up with Martha Kahn. That's no nonsense. They do a fantastic job. The reason I said about having guidelines is because of things like this. All right? Because I found machete on one colony, I found a paper pipe, I found a plastic pipe. That's the problem. If I catch somebody having this on the site at one of the colonies I have no problem taking it away from them. All right? Because I'm a little bigger than most people. And I am passionate about helping those animals. We had, just last week alone, we did 3 rescues here in Easton.
Well, Larry, not to cut you off, and I realize you may be bigger than others, but that's not your first step. Your first step is to call the authority and have the authority come out.
We are not.
That's not your place.
Excuse me, sir. We're not police officers.
I agree. I agree,
We're
Kenny.
volunteers. We are not the police.
I agree, but I am an ex-cop, and I'm also an ex-state constable, and also.
It has nothing to do with it.
But the problem is, if I can't stop the person from killing the cat, by the time the cop gets there, the animal's dead.
Okay,
My goal is to save the animal's life.
I understand you have probably had more time than the parking garage has had. So let's let the other people talk, because I've talked to them either in my office or on the phone. Come on up.
Mayor, if I just may make one comment on the contractual part of it, which I had worked with our finance director. The contract that the city council approved with the coalition was based on the legislative decision you made that this was what was before you. You considered it, and you were willing to grant $3,500 towards this process. How, everybody recognized that No Nonsense Neutering does a good job, and the focus was to assure that everything went well. It would be that organization or another provider similar to that. I had been given earlier a proposed contract that No Nonsense Neutering has at least passed out, I had indicated internally that I thought it was a lot better if the coalition was responsible with any contracts as opposed to the city getting directly involved because of provisions such as that the city of Easton, who has nothing to do with the capturing of the cats, will understand that there are risks associated with surgery, this exact language, some of which may not be reasonably foreseeable, and agrees to release, indemnify, and hold harmless no-nonsense neutering as well as their employees, agents, representatives, etc., from all losses, claims, demands, liability, causes of action, or expenses known or unknown arising from this agreement. Well, as the discussion happened earlier, anybody could sue anybody. This is it's not a $3,500 contract anymore. It's an unlimited exposure to the city if someone sued. So that would be something that would have to be stricken, but it was a reason I thought it was better if the coalition contracted directly. The other provision in the form that was provided was that it's the city of Easton must notify caretakers residents of the program restrictions and inform such that caretakers residents are responsible for any and all post-operative veterinary care and or medications deemed necessary, and we can't get into that. My feeling would be that if No Nonsense Neutering needs something to guarantee their payments, we have a simple side agreement that we can enter into, and we can work with their representatives saying that we will honor the invoices submitted up to the amount of the budget for this purpose, the primary obligation being that of the coalition, and that's the extent of our involvement contractually. So I just want to be clear when we talk about entering into a contract, this contract I would not recommend the city enter into, guaranteeing the payments up to $3,500. I have no problem whatsoever as long as it's simply a way that our grant is actually administered.
And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe in that contract that we agreed upon, the fact was that they will invoice us, so we're not paying it to a direct person, but paying the bill for that entity.
Yeah, I was pulling up the old contract. I think that was
we're going to get into a negotiation of the contract, so I would rather not done at the city council meeting, that we do that side.
Well, as I say, it would have to be, at this point, you've already passed this $3,500 grant through the coalition. So the only thing I could say as far as NNN, if they needed financial security, they can make a request, but it has to be limited within the framework that I just described, which is that we will follow up and make the payments, but we have to have no exposure or direct involvement with the program itself.
Sir, we contract with several municipalities. We always ask a solicitor to review the contract. If there's verbiage in there that you're not comfortable with, you can strike that. But that contract is what we use with every municipality around here to guarantee that you know what you're getting from us, and we know that we're going to get paid. The other thing I want to say to you is extremely important. The paperwork that we send with our invoice has a rabies certificate attached to it. That should be filed here in City Hall. Mr. Vanderveer should not be in charge of your rabies certificates.
But Mr. Vanderveer doesn't represent the city of Easton.
Well, you need to make sure that you're getting this paperwork. I'm just saying, you're going to get it from us. You should not be getting it from him because we're the delivering professional services to you. So I'm more than willing to work the contract to eliminate the language that you're not comfortable with. But again, I don't think you should enter any kind of professional services from myself or you without a contract. Thank you.
Who's the contract with? Is it through an individual or the actual 501c3?
The contract that the city entered into was between the City of Easton and the Coalition for Feral Cats of Lehigh Valley, which we did check when it was here, had been officially registered with the Pennsylvania Department of State. 501c3, I have no idea. It wasn't really our concern whether a 501c3 or not, because that has to do with whether donations are deductible, and it wasn't. So that, I mean, that was what you passed, and that's the whole thing. You might say the cat has left the barn for 2019, and the coalition, if down the road you don't like it after 2019, and I believe there was a little bit of discussion about that, I suggest you might want to consider assigning this to our health department and coming up with our own plan of who we would work with. That's maybe where the recommendation come from, because if this is a city purpose that we're going to get more directly involved with, we have a department that perhaps can make recommendations as to how to proceed in future years.
That's a very good recommendation.
That's a good recommendation. Yes, go ahead. Name and
Hi,
address.
my name is Stephanie Gallagher. My address is 402 Newlands Road East. On May the 3rd, I emailed each of you a letter concerning your decision to exclusively contract with one kind of unknown group referred to as the Coalition for the Feral Cats of the Lehigh Valley for trap, neuter, and return purposes. Several of the rescues that are here tonight signed off on that letter that I wrote to you. And we're here tonight because we didn't receive a response, and the concerns in the letter that each of you should have received are significant. I listed many concerns, and apparently we have found out that the city did make available $3,500 in 2018 to a vendor who did not take care of one single cat. So then in 2019, council approved, let's hire him again. And in 2019, he has not TNR'd one single cat to be billed to the city of Easton. The residents and taxpayers in Easton and the local rescues who have spent countless volunteer hours providing TNR and paying with personal or rescue money were not consulted, invited to participate in discussion, or included in any way. Your own animal control officers were not aware until they received my letter that any money was available in 2018 or 2019 to assist them with the abundance of phone calls they get about free roaming cats. Nowhere on the city's website was I able to find any information about who to contact. What does a resident do when there is a feral cat under their porch with kittens and they're in need of TNR services? Our concern is that due diligence was not done by council and that the vendor was not fully vetted before he was selected. The vendor has informed us that if we do not register with his coalition, he will shut us down, he will handcuff us, and he will make a citizen's arrest if he catches us not following any of his rules. A side note to that is that he's a black belt in karate and a bodybuilder, and that he does always carry handcuffs. This does not strike me as the spirit of a coalition. Pertaining to his rules for trapping, not only are they very impractical and often do not work in practice, they're arbitrary, restrictive, potentially illegal, placing video cameras on people's private property, and harassing. The vendor for the city of Easton has a long history of having difficulty getting along with other people and abusing his self-perceived powers. So what has happened for the past year and a half is that the rescues that are here tonight have volunteered hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars to help TNR the free-roaming cats in your community. Now we are being threatened with a citizen's arrest should we continue our volunteer work. What I bring to you tonight is a true dedicated coalition of rescues who are willing to continue to volunteer their time, and a proposal from No Nonsense Neutering that would empower the residents of this city, not your vendor, and the rescues that are willing to continue to help. However, the force and the threats are pushing us out. Your need for a TNR program is big. My hope is that mayor and council will decide to dissolve your contract with the current vendor and accept the assistance from a team of experts that have been doing this for a very long time. And I would encourage you to please consider surrounding areas who have experienced much success, including Forks, Palmer, Hellertown, Northampton, Catasauqua, Albertus, Emmaus, Whitehall, and Allentown, just to mention a few. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Gallagher, you know, Larry, you've already had your chance. How did you get a relationship with those municipalities?
No Nonsense Neutering contracted directly with all of those municipalities.
How did they do that? How did they do that?
That would be a question for the president of No Nonsense Neutering.
You have to speak at the microphone, please.
I think historically, municipalities have done nothing for cats. And so trap, neuter, return has become the method. And no nonsense neutering, all we do is surgeries. Thousands and thousands of cat neuters every year. And so what has happened as municipalities have searched for a way to manage it, they have come to us because we provide the largest number of surgeries available in the area.
So they're coming.
They're coming to me.
So they're coming to you.
They are. I just presented to the city of Phillipsburg. They will be signing with us. I was contacted by the borough of Penargil last week, and the mayor of Wingap has asked to attend because he wants to hear the program. We're struggling with how to deal with cats, and trap, neuter, return has become the way. But here's the primary number one thing we need. We need your support to pay the $35 fee. We're reimbursed $35 a cat. That was our fee 10 years ago. We're not doing this to make money. We're doing this as a community resource. And we do thousands and thousands of cats.
I appreciate your efforts and all the volunteer hours. All I'm asking is because we're being chastised for trying to correct a problem. Mr. Vanderveer, for better or for worse, has been here countless hours, spending here, waiting for to get his 5 minutes of fame at the podium, where he has solicited our service, his services to us. I wouldn't think, because I can honestly say I've never gotten calls about cats. I'm not getting those calls. So
You're lucky.
I know, I agree with you. So I wouldn't think that, okay, we have a real cat problem. He said, I better call somebody. Who do I call? He came to us. And I just want you to understand that had you come to us, you probably got the same reception.
I did. I was
But
here
you were with him. And so when he say he's working with no nonsense neutering, you say, well, they were both here.
Well, let me just say this to you. First of all, I appreciate the efforts of what you're doing. I really do. And if you look at what is happening throughout the Lehigh Valley, we have actually set the tone for much of the state of Pennsylvania because municipalities contracting for trap, neuter, return is happening in all over the country, but we actually have most of Lehigh County has contracted with no nonsense neutering. They recognized it 2010. They've been doing it. Northampton County's jumping in, but it's already been happening in Lehigh County. It's happening up in Wilkes-Barre. It's happening in Berks County. So what's happening when people do show up and say, you know, we have a problem, and you do have lots of volunteers. All I'm trying to say to you is, I know you don't care about how these cats are getting trapped, but what we do care about is done humanely.
Absolutely.
And it should be open to everyone. And I think all of us who have been doing this, I've been doing this for 15 years as well.
But you're educating us. We were not aware of that.
Well, and I appreciate that because nobody woke up yesterday and said, oh, I think trap, neuter, return's a great idea.
And
I think you're right. We need to educate you.
And I agree. And not to say that when Mr. Vanderveer came with you 2 years ago,
right.
In my mind, I was thinking that these two were still working together.
It's not that we're not working together, but I'm also working with them. And they want to help you
But
too.
I mean, that's what was going through my mind.
And what I want to
Had we had that information prior,
right.
I think we would have thought about this a little bit differently.
And I appreciate that. And all I want to say to you is this. There is absolutely, I've been trapping for 15 years. I've trapped all over the Lehigh Valley. There's no way that one person, Mr. Vanderveer, Fur, Nats Cats, there's no way we can all do this by ourselves. You are extremely lucky. There's 8 people in this room that are willing to work the city of Easton. But Larry emailed me 2 days ago. He's trapping in Palmer. He has a huge colony in Bath. He's trapping in the city of Bethlehem. So he cannot devote all of his services just to you. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Sure.
You need to open this up to anyone. that wants to work with the city, not for the city. The only person that's providing services here, is my company, No Nonsense Neutering. That's the only one that you really need to be contracting with. Sorry, I don't know if you can nullify, amend, make void what you just did, but
Well,
frankly, you shot yourself in the foot on this one.
No, we didn't,
No,
though,
we didn't.
because
We never came forward.